welcome back to the IMNerd Podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freyway, and I'm here with my co-host, Kenny, and we also have a very special guest with us, and a friend, returning guest of the show, Anthony Simpson is with us. So, Anthony, welcome back. This is our first God of War episode. It has been honestly in the making for a long time, but I have been a straggler to completing God of War 2018, which I will, for the rest of this podcast, just be calling 2018 because I can't deal with the fact that the name of that game is actually God of War 2018. But yes, this is going to cover everything before Ragnarok, because Ragnarok will get its own podcast episode. So I just want to get that out there right now. You don't have to worry about spoilers for a game that literally came out a week ago. And also people are playing Pokemon right now, including Anthony and Kenny. So I believe a lot of people have not completed Ragnarok. I know some of you people were like, I have to complete Ragnarok before Pokemon comes out, and you just rushed through the game. So, you know.
I tried.
Well, I'm glad you didn't succeed because you wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So there. But yeah, now Pokemon is out, and I know everyone's attention is heavily diverted to that, which I'm happy about because now I get to catch up on Ragnarok because I didn't buy it immediately. I had to still complete. So let me just give a quick backstory of what happened with me with God of War 2018. I was playing it last year. Actually, let me go all the way back to the beginning. In 2018, when it came out, I bought it. I put it on the hardest difficulty, which you cannot change once you start it that way. I got about 25% into the story now that I've played the whole game and beat it finally last week. I finally know where I was. I got 25% into the story before I gave up. Like, I just completely said, I'm not having fun with this. That shit was way too hard. And the only reason I did that, putting it on the hardest difficulty possible, is because when I was a kid, when I played the original first 3 God of War games, I would beat them, and then I'll play them on God mode, and I would beat them on God mode and like unlock like Zeus's armor or whatever, like whatever you could, Ares armor, unlimited magic, unlimited health, all this bullshit that you get when you do that. And that would be fun for me at the time when I was younger. As an adult, as someone who's in their big age, that is no longer fun to me to see the restart from last checkpoint screen a million times from every single fight that you get into. So in 2018, when this game came out, I gave up on it. And then everyone was telling me it's a fantastic game. It's actually so insane. Then it won Game of the Year. And I was like, how the fuck did that game win Game? I was like, that game was awful. But what I was really doing was I was thinking that the game was awful because I had such a terrible time with the Leviathan Axe, trying to learn the Leviathan Axe when you are used to playing all the other God of War games where they're kind of like third person zoomed out, the camera you have no control over. So it's just like a really wide angle lens looking at every enemy. You can't get back attacked really in the original games. In this game, you're getting back attacked. It's like over the shoulder third person. So it was a jarring change from the older God of War games to this one. And then also having it on the hardest difficulty, it just did not bode well. So I thought the game was bad because of that. My friend Gary beat 2018 and was like, it is one of the best games I've ever played. And I made him say that shit to me 3 times before. I was like, I need you to be clear. I am asking you, out of every game you've ever played, is this one of the best games you've ever played? He was like, it is by far one of the best games I've ever played. I was like, okay, I am going to restart it. I'm going to start it on a regular difficulty that you can actually, change, because only the hardest one you can't change. And I will assess for myself how good this game actually is. I restarted it in 2021 and I had a fantastic time with it. I was like, oh wow, this game's actually fucking insane. I was a crackhead. And then I got fucking sick from eating at that taco truck that almost killed me. And that took me out of commission for a month. I didn't play games. I didn't do anything. I didn't have sex. I didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! I barely watched TV. I didn't do anything. I just wasted away for like a month in a hospital. And after that whole thing transpired, I never went back to playing God of War. Like, I just had no passion for anything after I was sick. I didn't do anything. Like, I just was kind of like, I guess in a depressed state. So I didn't go back to God of War. And then Ragnarok got announced in 2022. So like an official release date, like it was coming out November 9th. And I found that out, I want to say around the summer, maybe the end of the summer, I found that Ragnarok was coming out officially. No more bullshit, no more pushbacks. So I was like, what the fuck? I have to actually play God of War 2018 again and like beat it. So I went back to it around September, October-ish, and I just beat it last week. So glad I did. The game is fucking phenomenal. And honestly, like, I really just like all the God of War games that I've played outside of the PSP ones. Every one of the main titles has been pretty fun for me in general. And Ragnarok, as different as it is, was also a welcome addition to the franchise. So that's just kind of like the backstory on how 2018 happened for me with that game. But yeah, Anthony, what are your What are your thoughts?
I mean, in my opinion, sounds like Frazier's a chump. I'm a real gamer. I beat God of War 2018 on Give Me God of War and stuck with it. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I did beat it on Give Me God of War, but it was a slog some parts.
Yeah.
Wait, did you beat
and
it the first time on that difficulty?
yeah, the first
I
one
didn't know that.
I beat it on Give Me God of War, and
I thought, yeah, I didn't know that. For some reason, I thought you played it on the second hardest difficulty, and then you played it again on the hardest difficulty.
no, because I've never beaten it again. I've only beaten it once. And it was there was a specific part with some wolves that was a slog. You can find it on the stream if it's still there. That anyway.
Good old gift time.
Yeah, that was gift time for sure. But
Damn.
I mean, I actually I tried beating Ragnarok on Give Me God of War and ended up having to switch the difficulty, but that'll be for the next podcast.
Just real quick, because I know we're not going to talk about Ragnarok really. I just want to, because you can't switch once you put it on that hardest difficulty in any of the games.
You can switch it, but you can never switch it back.
Oh,
so like if you switch it from Give Me God of War to any other difficulty,
it cannot go
you
back up.
can never switch it back to Give Me God of War.
Okay, I guess a lot of games actually do it that way. They're like, you can play it on the hardest difficulty, but if you ever bitch out at any moment, that's it.
I mean, that makes sense though, because like there'd definitely be people that would put it on easy and then switch it up to the hardest difficulty, and then for internet cloud, like, look what I did.
Yeah,
I beat it on the hardest difficulty.
You're right, because
the game like reads it if you like. The game reads if you like beat something on a different difficulty or something like that.
Yeah, but
that's
what I'm saying is like you beat it on easy, and then you change it to very hard and save it, and then you show like a screenshot of your save file that says very hard. Or whatever, you know what I mean?
Like I could do that right now with Ragnarok. I could go into my Ragnarok file. I could change it to the difficulty right below Give Me God of War or whatever it's called in this one, and it will
Give Me No Mercy. I think is what it's called.
Yeah, so I could change it to that, and it will literally show as though I've been playing like the last 6 hours of the game on that, and I just have not. Like I've been playing on normal difficulty since I started, and I've been really enjoying myself. It is a bit easy, I won't lie. Like it's actually the combat. And all of them, so not even, this is all for Ragnarok now. The combat in God of War games, I think in general, on normal, for me, is very trivialized. Like it's very, very easy in my opinion. They've all just been like because it's a beat 'em up game with a story. Like it's just like I've played Devil May Cry franchise. I know my best friend used to play the Bayonetta franchise, and those beat 'em up games, they're like meant for you to do combos. Like I think there's even a combo counter in God of War games, the old ones anyway, where it would just show like, yeah, you're at 50 hits now, you're at 70
Oh no,
hits.
the new ones have it, don't they?
Have it
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember. I don't know why it's not coming to me that there's a combo counter, but there might be. But I remember in the first three, God of Wars 1, 2, and 3, for sure, because you had a jump button in those games, and jumping is just like it's just a crazy thing to have. Like, can we just talk about having a jump button? How ridiculous! I was thinking about in God of War 2018, they removed a lot of things, right? And one of them is the jump button. You just cannot jump. And like I said, it's over the shoulder, third person. So it's very close up to Kratos' body, which took a while for me to get used to. But the combat, at first I was annoyed because I wanted the Blades of Chaos. Every single game, you've used the Blades of Chaos, and you've always had other weapons, but you start out every other game besides 2018 with the Blades of Chaos. So when I started off God of War 2018, I was already annoyed. I was immediately annoyed with the Leviathan X. I wasn't impressed by it. I didn't like it. I was annoyed. Also, again, this is also, I have a bias here though, because I started off on that difficulty and I just wasn't having fun anyway. So like you have to add that into the fact that I would throw my axe, an enemy would run up to me and punch me and I would die. And I'll be like, what the fuck? How do I get the axe back? So I didn't understand. It was too much happening too fast and it was merciless. So you couldn't there wasn't enough time to be like, oh, you press triangle to bring your axe back and you could defend yourself and stuff. I didn't know how to block. Like it was bad. So just know that when I speak about my unpleasant experience with 2018, at least in the beginning, is all because of the hardest difficulty. But I do think in general, the combat is one of the best things about God of War. I think it's like honestly why most people play it, because while the story is good, they definitely, like Santa Monica, the people who created the franchise, they just really put a lot into how fluid the fighting is. And it's crazy because the game is old as dirt now. Like now that we're old, the game is old too.
So my overall experience with God of War, from God of War 1 to now Ragnarok, has been played the original one, was like, that was cool. Played the second one, was like, that was great. And then I got to the third one. Never played any of the PSP ones, or I only played 1, 2. Yeah. I played the main entries.
And I feel weird saying that to a person who loves Kingdom Hearts, because there is a storyline on those side games that it does make things make sense and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, those games are honestly pretty shite, and you could just watch a video like we did today that goes over what happened in them, and even the video.
And I'm glad I missed them, because let me tell you. No, I because like I was a big fan of God of War, and I think that was probably around the time the Mass Effect was out. So like so like for me, the way that God of War 2 ended on a cliffhanger, and the way that Mass Effect 2 ended on a cliffhanger were like neck and neck. And I was like, and then I got disappointed by both third entries, and I was like, oh, that sucks. Because I know everyone loved God of War 3. I personally it was a huge disappointment for me.
Well, just like why was God of War 3 a disappointment to you? Because there's one thing about God of War 3 that I just want to say now. It did the best out of any game I've ever played in my life. God of War 3's opening specifically is the best opening of a video game I've ever played.
Opening was dope. The opening was dope.
First 30 minutes of that game, by far, the best
killing Poseidon was great. And like, I like that you pretty much got to go through the game and kill all of the Greek gods. But I think that the thought that I remember having playing through a majority of the game was, especially waiting so long between God of War 2 and God of War 3, was this game is just a PS2 game on the PS3. That was nothing changed. They didn't really make the gameplay experience anymore. Like, they didn't enrich the gaming experience. Like, how everyone played Breath of the Wild, for example, and now Tears of the Kingdom is coming out, and everyone is going to have an unconscious expectation that the gameplay itself is going to be better than Breath of the Wild, right? Because it probably will. God of War 3 didn't do that for me from God of War 2, and the combat seemed kind of frustrating, and that was, I think, the first time that I changed the difficulty in a God of War game, because I was playing on whatever the hardest difficulty was there, and then I remember specifically the fight with, I think, Cerberus in God of War 3. I rage quit. I actually quit a game and didn't play it for a good month, and then was like, no, fuck this. I'm just gonna change the difficulty when I got back to it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's weird, because I played the first two on the hardest difficulty too. So it's weird when you've played 2 entries of a series on a certain difficulty and you're used to it, and then you play another one and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this not the same? It's demoralizing, I guess, because you've gotten used to it and you feel like, oh, I've proven myself, I can play on this difficulty.
That's what I thought I was doing in 2018. I thought I was big shit. I was like, I'm gonna go into, I didn't know how much different 2018 was gonna be. I honestly went into 2018 without watching any. I didn't even watch I'm sure that there's gameplay videos and trailers and stuff before it released. I just didn't get into any of that. I wanted to go into it raw, because I didn't even know that he was in the Norse mythology world now. I didn't know that we were dealing with Odin and Thor in them now. I didn't know how they resurrected the game. Can we just talk about how brilliant it is, honestly, that this original series starts off, the original trilogy is Greek mythology. You're dealing with Zeus, Ares, Athena, Persephone, Hades, all those guys, right? We know all of those gods, and you essentially slaughter all of them throughout the course of the 3 games, Zeus being the last one. And it's really satisfying to just, finish that trilogy, see Kratos' end of it all, where he tries to kill himself. But then there is a cliffhanger where, after he stabs himself with the Blade of Olympus, and you see the blood splatter and a big hole in his chest, when it pans back, he's not there anymore in the spot that he was laying down, assumably dead. And that just left it off in a way it was okay.
That was on, and you just that just sparked a memory for me playing God of War 3. I got through all of that, and then the ending to me made no fucking sense, and I was like, this series is fucking dumb. And I was like, I'm never playing any of these fucking games again.
Oh boy, were you wrong.
I was mad about it. I was mad about it forever.
You know what's weird? Or maybe not weird, maybe that's not the right word to use, but every time I've ended a God of War game, I just kind of go, okay. I've never, except, okay, let me rephrase that. I just ended 2018, and 2018 blew me the fuck away because of the reveal.
I think that's the overall consensus is the first 3 God of War games are, they're really fun games, and there's a story there, but it's nothing that's going to make you cream.
Yeah.
But God of War 2018,
it's more
everybody that played it is like,
focused.
holy shit, the story in this game is like a real fucking story.
Yes, it definitely is more from a narrative perspective than any of the other games. Like it's less action, honestly, than speaking of which, again, I'm not going to delve too much into Ragnarok, but I do want to say when I started Ragnarok, I was like, when do I get control of my character? Because there was just a lot of cinematic stuff. And it felt like playing a Final Fantasy game back in the day where a lot of it is cinematic. It's just a lot of it is you enjoying a story and watching it and not playing it, which is a huge change from the first trilogy because those games, they start out with you literally fighting a Hydra on a boat. It's like your first interaction. Like you're immediately fighting. And even God of War 3 starts off with you literally fighting Poseidon, the god of the seas or whatever. That's like the actual opening scene. So I was used to like right into the action immediately. And neither one of the reboots or sequels, or whatever you want to call it, the second trilogy, neither one of them start off like that. They start off very solemn. Cool. Yes, they start off very slowly. And it just takes a lot to get used to when you're used to something that existed in a part of your childhood. Now I'm a big adult and they've changed it so drastically, not only from a gameplay perspective, but just the take that they're like the angle that they're approaching the game.
That's the second time you said big adult. I want to what's a big adult versus a little adult? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
A young adult for me is somebody who may still be in college, somebody who is probably still living at home, somebody who doesn't have like real bills yet, stuff like that. And then I consider a big adult to be someone who is far past school. You've been working your career for a couple years, whatever your career is, whether you went to school or not, doesn't matter. Whatever your career is, you've been doing it for like close to 10 years. I've been working mine for 10 years now. I assume you probably have too. And we have been paying bills on our own. We have been like living primarily on our own or like with someone, but not directly with our parents. And we've also have been just struggling through life, like the adult struggle that really happens when you're no longer going through life with that optimism that young people tend to have, where they think that like they're going to get
all the hope inside you has died. That's what it means to be an adult.
Can we be honest? There is a bit of jadedness that comes with age, and I didn't realize it. You know how Squidward, when you watch SpongeBob as a kid, he comes off as this crotchety old man. He comes off as somebody who just like hates the world. And you're always wondering like, why is he so fucking crotchety? And then you become older and you realize that Squidward is you. Like you are just
like, oh, can relate. I can relate.
You hate kids now. Like you see kids on the train, you see kids in the airport, you see kids on the bus.
I do hate kids. I hate other people's kids.
You just can't stand kids. You realize that. Go ahead, Kenny.
Other people's kids are brain dead, and it's not their fault. It's the parents' fault. Because nobody beats their kids anymore.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
I'm with Kenny though. You're right.
I'm just saying, man.
Bring back
listen,
punishment.
The amount of times I've been at work and like kids are just running around while people are carrying food, carrying drinks, whatever, to like tables, and kids are just running around. And you can't say like, hey, asshole, go sit down, because then you're the asshole. But it's like, do something about you. And they'll just sit there sipping with their fucking pinky out, sipping their stupid beer, watching their kids run around like assholes and won't do anything about it. It's like, first of all, your kids should be trained so that when you go out to a place like that, they know not to act that way to begin with. But
Kenny's taking the Kratos approach.
I was about to say that.
That's a perfect segue.
I'm just saying.
Segue back into God of War. You know who does love? You know who does love kids, and not in a creepy way? Kratos, because that's the only time that he shows any empathy or emotion towards people. You are right.
He's consistent with that. That is very true.
Like if it's a kid, he's like, "Oh well, hold on, I won't beat you bloody," you know. But like anybody else, he's
reluctant to sacrifice kids too. He won't even if it's for his revenge, which is kind of his. In the original trilogy, his entire premise was revenge. Like that's what drove him to do everything he ever did. And then he gets to a point, I think in the third game, where he has to sacrifice a child. And he's like, oh, I guess I just want
Pandora.
Yeah. He's like, I guess this is just where he's like, I'll just go fight Zeus regular. I don't fucking care. Like I'll just do what I gotta do.
But I mean, to be fair,
though, because the source of his revenge, right? The source of his revenge was his family being killed and stuff, and you do see that trope in
not only them being killed, he was tricked into killing them himself.
Yeah,
and then not only that, but he had to wear their ashes on his skin for the rest of time. So you know,
and I do like that trope where it's like the big, brutal, bloody, like murderous man but then like he's really soft and like kind to like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
I always love that for every brute in any franchise, anime,
Yeah.
any medium, manga, movies. I love when somebody is just not going to kill literally everything in front of them, no matter who it is. Like I can't.
and but you've seen this person be a savage, but then
Yes.
you also see that like, oh, this guy, he still has a mind. He's still there. There's still like
Yeah.
a reason to what he's doing, and like he sees the innocence in like
Even if it's
children or
only
whatever.
1% of a mind, he has a mind
Yeah.
in there somewhere. I do want to, now that we've brought up his backstory, Anthony brought it up. I want to bring up what I think is really cool about Kratos as a character. So the original game, you don't even know why you're doing what you're doing for a while. It's like a reveal. It's actually a couple reveals that happen throughout the original trilogy, who your dad is, why you want to kill Ares, the god of war, and like everything. So the original story is that Kratos is a Spartan, like that's what he was raised as. And if you ever seen the movie 300, you see what they go through as far as rigorous training. If you ever seen Game of Thrones, the what are they called? Those people that like the Unsullied. They're basically unsullied, but they have penises. So they go through vigorous training, vigorous mental. I'm gonna just call it like mental attacks at that point, because the way they're trained is like not what any human should go through. But they're made to be Spartans. And he was amazing at it. Like he was an amazing fighter. He ended up becoming a war general, very good at what he did, but he went against some barbarians in the original game and he was losing. Like his people were getting fucking wiped out. It wasn't even close. And so he basically prayed to the god of war, Ares, to help him defeat his enemies. Ares did so, but it came with a cost, and he sacrificed his soul to the god of war, Ares. Ares liked Kratos so much in this position of being like his little personal war general that he decided it is in Ares' best interest to make it where Kratos has no bond to any living mortal. He doesn't have any weaknesses. And because Kratos had a family, a wife, and a daughter, he decided that it would be best to eliminate them and have, for what I don't know why, but he decided that the best way to do that, because he could have done it in a way, in my opinion, that would have made it like, okay, they could have died in war times and Kratos would have just been mad at somebody else. But he took it upon himself to have Kratos tricked under some fucking sorcery, and Kratos ends up killing his own wife and daughter while he's slaughtering a village because of Ares' command. And so once Kratos realizes what he's done, because he's blindly killing people, right? He's just going around killing everybody. And when he kills his own family, he realizes what he's done, and a great shame comes over him. And then the ashes of his burning family literally like attach themselves to his skin. And so it makes him this pale white color. Because when you're playing the game, you have no idea why he looks the way he looks. Like, you know, he's a Spartan, but his skin is like, it's not white. It is blatantly just a pale color. Like
and you're like, aren't people in Greece supposed to have,
I was like some kind of color. He has no color. He's devoid of color. So he looks strange. And honestly, before I ever played a God of War game, so the first one came out, I think in 2005. Before I ever played a single God of War game, I used to look at the cover and I would think like, oh, that doesn't like something I really want to play. Like I just wasn't, this is like 15-year-old me. So you could do the math on how old I am now, finally. But in 2005, 15-year-old me, which is not really into like the way this game looked, and I didn't understand why he was that color. It just looked kind of silly. But when you play it and you get to reveal that he's wearing his family's ashes and he was tricked into killing them, and his whole plight is like revenge, and he's working with the god Athena, and she's like basically escorting him through this mission because she has her own secret agendas. Everybody wants to use this guy. And so he's being used, but at the end of the day, he makes it very clear. Look, I want to kill Ares, the god of war. That's the first game. The second game, you find out that Zeus is actually Kratos' father. And Zeus starts the game off in the second one trying to kill Kratos because he's afraid that Kratos is going to eventually try to kill all the gods, which he is not wrong about. So he has like paranoia. Zeus has paranoia. And this is like real Greek mythology anyway. Zeus is a very paranoid god. Despite being like the leader of all the gods, he's a paranoid person. So he's
also a hoe. So like it's funny because
Zeus is a big hoe.
Some people could be like, "Oh, that's really cringe that Kratos is the son of Zeus," and it's like, well, if you look at it, if you look at the lore of Zeus,
you should have fucking seen it coming.
You should. He has so many fucking kids, like hundreds and that. Like he just fucks anything.
A bunch of bastards.
He fucks the dirt. He turns mud into his kids. Zeus don't give a fuck.
Yes, Zeus has transformed into different animals and stuff to fuck people.
Yeah, Zeus is the epitome of any hole is the goal.
Yes. So Zeus is a whore. And yeah, you found out in the second game that, you know, there's like this war with the Titans going on, that Zeus is in prison because they also were going to kill him. So he like enslaved all the Titans. And then you're working with those guys who also are using Kratos, like Gaia. She's basically the earth itself, essentially. and she's working with you now because like Athena has crossed you and all this other stuff. So there's like a bunch of reveals throughout the story, but I think it's really cool how impactful those reveals are, and just you understand why he's so fucking angry, because I don't think the story will work if you just had this angry ass person going through killing everybody, but without a legitimate reason. And obviously having him slaughter his own wife and daughter is fucked. Like that is,
I mean,
like,
honestly, I don't see how they thought that there would be any other outcome other than this person
Agreed.
slaughtering the entire pantheon. Like, you made the man slaughter his own wife and daughter, and then forced him to wear their ashes.
and also I forgot a part, but he
and they're
also
like, "Why
has
is he killing us? We don't understand."
he also has to relive it, right? Like every night or some shit. Like he has these memories. Isn't that like what he's asking? He's actually, his whole storyline in the beginning is, I want the memories of that to be taken away. I cannot sleep. Every night when I dream about that moment where I killed my family. That is literally every day for him. So like his whole life is just torment and torture at that point, and he wants to be relieved of that. And they tell him, oh yeah, if you do this, if you do what we say, if we the gods, if you do what we say, we will take those memories from you. He does the first game. He kills Ares, the god of war. He becomes the new god of war at the end of the game, which is badass as fuck. Like he literally walks on and sits on a throne, gets armor and everything. And for 12 years, he rules as the god of war. But then he goes to Athena, the person he's been working with this whole time. And he's like, hey, so about those memories that I have that are like tormenting me, that you said you would take away once I did what I was supposed to do for you, I still have them. And she's like, oh yeah, nothing can actually take those memories away. Bye. Like literally that. Not even like paraphrasing it. Like she literally is like, oh yeah, you'll never lose those memories. Like they'll be with you forever. Peace.
Enjoy.
So he's like, bitch, I'll kill you too. Which he does. And yeah, she does some like Yoda bullshit where she's like, I've reached a higher plane of life. Even though you've killed me, I am now a spirit that can just talk to you and essentially haunt you for forever. So now on top of the memories that you have of your family, I'm also just haunting you and telling you what you need to do and what you need to not do for the rest of your days, because I'm the one god that got killed and just for some strange reason can just still exist. But that's the story. That's essentially
she even haunts him in God of War 4.
Yes, God of War 4. She comes
Fraser's calling it God of War 2018. I'm calling it God of War 4.
God of War 4, God of War 2018, synonymous.
God of 4.
I'm not calling it that, actually, no.
It's God of 4.
No, I'm not calling it that.
God of 4 is
but it's actually, like, in retrospect, the God of War 4 kind of, it doesn't only work, but you can only really truly appreciate it if you've played the other God of War games.
I agree with that. I wouldn't even say, it's a standalone game that can work on its own, but God of War 4 2018 on its own, I think makes the first 3 games even better.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like the first 3 games were just like God of War games, and like everybody just knew what they were.
And they are good. To be clear, just by the way, I just want to say this real quick. To be clear, the original trilogy was critically acclaimed when it was out.
Yeah,
like the original trilogy for God of War was big. It was a fucking huge game when it was releasing. Like,
I always thought it was good for its cool factor. You get like to meet the different gods of the Greek pantheon, and like in the second game, you try to kill the Sisters of Fate, and then like you meet Gaia, and I was like, oh shit, this is like like everything
Chronos,
condensed into this story, like
and shit. It's really good. Like the original trilogy. I don't want to like act like, because we're not shitting on it by any means. Like it is what it is. You know, it's old now.
Yeah,
it's obviously we live in a different world. But back then in 2005, like fucking 2005, when the PSP was still popping, like the original God of War trilogy was nice. And I agree strongly with what you're saying, Kenny, that the God of War 4 2018, whatever you want to call it. We have 3 titles for it at this point. Whatever you want to call it.
It makes those games, like, because those games are really cool. They're really fun, and they have like a cool story, but I feel like most people didn't play the game. Like, people didn't play the game and like really talk about this. Like, the games were fun. And it was more like the bloodiness and like I killed it wasn't really about the story.
Weapons you get, because like you get some crazy weapons. You get Zeus's thunderbolts at one point. You get fucking
you get the Hades sickles, and you're like, hey, I pulled the Hades soul out of his body.
The head of Helios is literally something that you walk around with, using as the fucking portable sun. Like,
but now the story of those games is cooler now, because it gives so much context to who Kratos is as a person. Like, Kratos as a person in 2018 is like, there's so much in it when you see the way he treats like his son and the way you go through that game. It it has so much more weight when you understand the things that he went through and everything he's done before this point.
It is really nice to see a character develop over the course of decades now. You look at the original game, look at his character design, he virtually has no facial hair. And by the time you get to God of War 4, he has a full-on monstrous beard. He's you can tell he's way older. He's bulkier. He's kind of lost some definition, so he's not as cut, but he has like that, I'm older, I kind of have that like beefy, huge body. I'm still very muscular, but I'm not as cut as I was when I was like a young man. And his demeanor, the way he carries himself in God of War 4 is just growth. Like, to put it simply, like to put one adjective on it, he just had a lot of growth. And I really like seeing what he used to be, because I remember it, just a raging asshole essentially. But I understand why he was like that. But he was just like almost blindly raging at that point. And now he's so calculated and calm with his son Atreus, who we have yet to mention, but like now let's get into it. Like, God of War 4 introduces a fucking new character, this little boy that you have from the beginning of the game, and he doesn't even call him by his name for a while. Like, when you play the opening sequence of God of War 4, it's just boy, like everything. And you can kind of get the idea, like maybe this is his son, but like how the fuck did we get here, right? Because like that's the mystery of God of War 4. You don't know. And even right now, where I'm at anyway in Ragnarok, I still don't really know how the fuck I ended up in this complete different world with a son, with a wife that I am taking her ashes to the highest point in all the realms. Like, I have no idea how we got here. And that is a big mystery of the entire story right now, that honestly, some people might not like that. I really like it because it's what keeps me watching. It's the same way I feel about Demon Slayer. Like, Demon Slayer to me is not some great anime on its own. It is a very cliche anime. It's a story that we've seen a million times before in shonen. But what I love about it is that we don't know why the villain is doing what he's doing. Like, there's so much mystery in Demon Slayer, and that's what makes it great to me, is the mystery. And so God of War 4 has this like huge mystery. Like, how the fuck did Kratos survive? How did he end up in the Norse mythology realms? Like, why is he beefing with Odin and Thor and all these people now? Like, how did this even happen? And then he has a son and a wife that died. You don't know. You find out like at the end of God of War 2018 that his wife was a giant, which makes his son half god, half giant, and also partially mortal in some way. Like, it's a lot. And I think all of those things just really make like the from the beginning God of War 1 all the way to now, just seeing this character develop, become a father again for the second time, and really try to do it right. Like, he visibly holds back in a lot of moments.
Well, I want to say it's weird because he doesn't do it right, obviously. Well, I mean, but what's right? But he, I guess Kratos is kind of he's ruled by fear, because
Yes, he is.
He's like, can't lose another kid.
Yes.
And then
Fear is
and
a
then
really
B,
good word to describe him, actually.
I mean, the fear is kind of what haunts him every moment, because his biggest fear is that his child is going to become like him.
Yep. He tries to
That's
prevent it
like
at
his
every turn.
main, yeah. He's like, you cannot become what I was. And it's, I don't know, at some point in like the time between God of War 3 and God of War 4, Kratos was like, he looked back on what he did and I don't know, was embarrassed, ashamed, something. But he probably looked back and was like, fuck, I killed all of them. Like,
Yeah, and a
I
lot of
killed
other
every
people,
single
too.
one of them.
He killed them and a lot of other people who were innocent. I think at one point he says, I killed a lot of people who deserved it and a lot of people who didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
And so, because there's one scene at we watched a 2 hour and 30-minute video before this, me and Anthony, that is like crazy. It goes through the beginning of God of War all the way to God of War 4. And one of the scenes that the guy talks about is pretty repulsive, that Santa Monica even included it. There's a scene where Poseidon's wife, that she's like captured. First of all, this woman is being held prisoner by Poseidon. She's not willingly his wife. So that's the first thing. Kratos comes across her, and
Because Poseidon was a fucking creep. But yes.
Kratos comes across this woman in this room, in her dungeon, basically, and he can't get out the room. And the only way to get out the room that he thinks is to use her actual physical living body as a way to stop this wheel from rotating. So she gets fucking slaughtered for literally existing in this room. Like, she was just conveniently there, not all of the enemies that you killed to get to that chamber. She was conveniently in this room, and her body, her living body, was just used to stop this wheel in the most gruesome way, just to be like brutal and God of War, because that's what it was back then. Just like, we just want to show brutality, we want to show tits. Like that was just the game.
You got all of that in one scene. It was great.
You got all of it in one scene, and it's a complete unnecessary scene, but it also is like, because like at that point it doesn't add anything to his Kratos' character. You know exactly who he is. He's already done so much of this type of shit. But then to see that again, and then to see who he is in 2018 is crazy. It's like these are very different people. So when Anthony uses the word fear, and he's like, I do not want to be that person anymore, and I think it is a part of shame because he buried the Blades of Chaos in God of War 4. Like when you finally get them, which is mid-game, you go through half of the game literally without the Blades of Chaos. So much so that I started to wonder, am I really going to be using a fucking axe this entire game? Like that's wild to me. But you eventually get them, but they're buried. And the thing that makes him go to get the Blades of Chaos is the fear of losing his son. Like he does not use them against Baldur in the beginning. Baldur visits you in the very beginning, who's another god, and y'all fight, and you start getting your ass beat by him, and he doesn't think, oh, maybe this is a good time I should go grab the Blades of Chaos to trivialize his fight. No, he decides to keep on going with just the axe and his fisticuffs. But when Atreus succumbs to an illness that is brought on by the idea that he believes he is mortal, but he's realistically a god and a giant, for whatever reason, that causes an illness in him that the body and the mind are not connected. They believe two different things. So it causes an illness, which is like a cool thing that they just made up some shit like that. But that causes Kratos, seeing his son basically dying, it causes him to go back to his old ways, pick up the Blades of Chaos again, and like start the slaughter. Because at that point,
because he needs the blades to go into Helheim,
where the axe does not work.
Hell is cold, and the Leviathan axe is also ice, and which, for the record, Fraser didn't like the Leviathan axe. I love the Leviathan
at first.
Axe. I was like,
on the hardest difficulty.
No, even at first, I was like, this is cool. Kratos should have probably always had a weapon like this, because it was like the Leviathan axe is big damage, and I love big damage weapons. So like when he was rocking like an ice axe, I was like, I don't even care where the Blades of Chaos are. You can throw this. I was like, you can throw this axe wherever and it'll come back to you. That's dope.
And then like you got like combos.
And then you got like the combo, you could throw the axe and then you could like jump and like catch the axe, and then like I was like, man, this is.
I was with you. Yeah. I'm with you when you're right. But I wanted my blade. I was always thinking in the back of my mind. I was like,
I was like, I can never see those again. It's okay. I never have to fight Cerberus at that gate ever again. It's fine. And
not your trauma from fucking Cerberus on God of War mode.
and then
but I get it.
He got the Blades of Chaos, and I was like, that's actually really cool.
It was an epic moment too.
I wasn't ever expecting to get them in that game. So like I thought it was even going to be like, oh, he gets them, there's going to be a cutscene, he's going to use them, and then that's it. I was like, they didn't make like mechanics for
that's what I thought too.
Blades of Chaos in this
game. Half the game without
you play half the game without it. Yeah,
you start thinking this game mechanically doesn't make sense that it would have the Blades of Chaos now. Like the longer you play it, the more you realize how broken they would be, right? Because that's what in my head.
Right. Yeah. Because you're like, those are hack and slash weapons.
Yes, and you could be.
And this isn't a hack and slash game.
You could distance yourself. It's really Smash Bros. It's spacing that freaked me out. I was like, how the fuck is this game going to be fair if I can space myself now? Like I can literally do a ton of damage by being nowhere near my enemies, which was always, in hindsight, now that I'm older, in all of the God of War games, he was always absurdly broken because of that. Like you don't have to be near the monsters. And then
Santa Monica was like, well, now it's a hack and slash. So I was like, oh, fuck yeah. All right, well, okay.
But yes, that first scene where you go back to your house when Atreus is dying, you go back to your house, you dig them up, and like he removes the bandages that he has blatantly hidden from Atreus too. Like he hid the wounds because the Blades of Chaos have those like indentations on his skin from where they used to be. But he wrapped bandages in the very beginning of the game, so Atreus doesn't really ever have to see it. He removes those bandages when he first gets them in 2018, and you see the marks there, and then they like dig into his flesh again, and they ignite on fire because they're literally attached to his soul. And he goes on a killing spree because a bunch of enemies appear that are made of ice. A bunch of enemies appear that are made of ice right outside his house, and it's like your first chance to use them, and it is just hack and slash. It is just you raging about, swinging them every which way, and realizing that they kind of mechanically don't work in the game though. And I don't mean that in literally they didn't design the game to work that way, but they are broken. Like they are so fucking broken.
Super satisfying to use still.
Very.
And I'm glad it still had like my favorite combo ender. You had to earn it as a skill,
Yeah.
but it's like the one where he's like slash slash slash, and then like it does like slow mo, and he brings them both over his head and like slams them on the ground.
Yes. I think it's called the
But
plume, something like that.
yeah,
That move
that is my
yeah.
favorite combo ender for
And
that.
that's how I know that you played it on God mode, because if you played it on God mode, you know that you need those short and strong combos like that, because
Oh yeah,
animation commitments, like being frame locked into any kind of move, like any move with too much commitment is not good in God mode. You just can't even use it. Like if there's any move that lasts too long is like an animation commitment, is unusable.
man. Let me tell you where I'm at in Ragnarok right now. No, I mean I won't literally, but yeah, I have definitely like optimized both Kratos and Atreus to be like,
Speed.
look, whatever has the least frames, that's your best move.
Yes.
Those are your best moves, because
it quickly becomes a meta. Like you need to realize that there is a meta when playing it on the highest difficulty. I'm playing it on normal difficulty, so I'm allowed to just use literally anything. And sometimes what's funny to me, I'll do certain moves that I know the move is bad. Like the move is blatantly bad. It's fancy, it's beautiful, it's cool to look at, but I'll get hit while doing it in normal mode, and I'll take like, I don't know, 10% of my health. But I'll just think to myself immediately, dear God, if this was any other difficulty, that would be either half my life, and in the hardest difficulty, I would be dead, because I tried to use a move that has such a long commitment, because you're not immune to damage when you do moves with long commitments. You can be hit, and it's bad. So yeah, you have to optimize your builds depending on what difficulty you're playing on, which is so funny, because yeah, that move that Anthony brought up earlier, where you like slam your blades of chaos to the ground, and like this big ass spire of fire comes up or whatever, is it's one of the best moves when you're playing God mode, and I learned that very, very young.
But I mean, I was already taking big chances, because like my favorite move with the Leviathan axe is like his heavy move when you hold R2, and he does like the big like hold. Yeah, I was already taking big chances, because I was like, there's no way I'm not like cleaving my way through the entire game. I love
cleaving. I love that they also incentivize you to cleave. Like you get bonuses and experience points for killing it, because it's a one-hit kill. So you just like cleave the fucking monster in half. Whatever you're fighting, it just dies. But it's a long ass commitment. So you have to space and time it really well to not like get hit.
I mean, the trick is using Atreus. Like Atreus is pretty broken.
Having a second character.
Yeah, having a fucking companion
it's not okay. Like what the fuck? You know what's funny? Again, this is my gripe with having it on the hardest difficulty in 2018 when it came out. I hated Atreus. I was like, holy shit.
Oh, really? You didn't like him?
I didn't like him, because I was like having to think about pressing square while, because you do both at the same time. You can attack with your buttons and also press square to use him at the same exact time. And I really didn't understand mechanically that that's what I was supposed to be doing from the rip.
Yeah.
So it took me a while.
Because you're not used to it. It's usually just Kratos.
It's usually just Kratos. And again, this is all a transition from my mind being focused on a game where you are playing in third person, zoomed out, by the way. You cannot be back attacked in the original games. The original trilogy, there's no such thing as a back attack. You can see every monster on screen, and the camera is locked. You have no camera control. So this game, you control your own camera, and it's so close to Kratos' body that when monsters are behind you, you have to turn around because you have to listen. Atreus will say, "Dad, behind you." And when I was playing at first, I was like I'm really supposed to listen to that and do what he's saying, like turn the fuck around. Like he's not just saying that, like you need to actually turn around. And when you turn around and you see a monster coming at you with a red mark, you just like dodge out the way or block, depending on what kind of move it is. But it took a while to get used to those mechanics, because my mind was still just stuck in the original trilogy. But having a second character still was OP as fuck. Like Atreus is so outrageous, and when he gets those lightning arrows,
the lightning arrows are insane. He gets lightning wolves, and I'm just like, and I was like, who is this kid? And I was like, well, I guess he is a demigod, right? Because like he's Kratos' son. And then you end up finding out at the end, and this is really where, because honestly, my play experience with God of War 4 was, this is really cool. I'm glad that they did like this fresh take on God of War. It feels like a new series. Like I'm glad with everything that they did. And I was like, but the story was like a cute father-son story. And then it gets to the very, very end of the game. And the very, very end of the game has this reveal. And I know that like everyone watching me like stream the end of the game at like 4:00 in the morning on Twitch, like my reaction when Atreus was like, Well, yeah, but the one thing I didn't understand in those prophecies was they called me Loki, and I was like, "He's Loki," and it was
Bro.
like this huge fucking like I was like, "Whoa!" And it was such a good reveal that it made me rethink the entire
Every
game,
single
and I was
thing.
like, the game like instantly went from like that was a good game to fuck that was a great game.
You had to
because
recontextualize the entire game from one fucking word at the end of the game. You had to recontextualize, and everything started to make sense the more you think about it. But
Yep.
I'll talk about my experience because I just had mine last week. So let me just start off by saying I did not get spoiled somehow. It's been 4 years. Somehow,
Oh, really? That didn't get spoiled for you,
bro. I was telling Gary this. I was telling Gary this a couple days
Wow.
ago when I ended it. I ran to Gary. He was downstairs like fucking making food or some shit. I ran and I was like, bro, did you, like, obviously he knows, but I was like, do you know that I had no idea that Atreus this entire fucking time was Loki? No one ever spoiled that for me. Now, things that have gotten spoiled. So to put into context, I had things spoiled in the 4 years about God of War since I stopped playing it. And I also told myself, I don't care about God of War as a franchise anymore. The newest one is just not for me. They did too many different things. I didn't like it. Again, all because of the difficulty, but I didn't realize at the time that that's what it was. I was like, oh, it's too different. It's not my thing. I'm just kind of getting off this ship. I'm quitting. And so I was like, when people would tell me stuff, I was like, I just didn't care. One of the things that I was told about me and spoiled for me was the Valkyrie Queen. I knew about her existence years ago. So when I was playing it, I was always wondering and thinking that she was the boss of the game. So I was playing God of War 2018, like up until last week, with the idea that the Valkyrie Queen was the actual boss of the game, for one, like narratively. I thought that she was going to be narratively the boss. And I had no idea that Baldur and Freya, I knew nothing about that storyline. I didn't even know that Freya was his mom. I had no idea about that. I had no idea that he was made impervious to all feeling. So a lot of the main things about the story, thank God, somehow didn't get spoiled for me. And the Loki reveal blew my fucking mind. I just had no idea that that was ever going to be a thing. So that was really big to me. And again, like Anthony's saying, you really have to recontextualize everything you know about Atreus, because there's a turning point in the God of War 4 game where Atreus finds out who he really is. Kratos realizes that he can no longer continue to hide it from Atreus because it's hurting him, literally, physically hurting his son to believe that he is a god or a human. And so when he finds out, Atreus, like any other kid, is like, holy shit, that's so fucking cool.
That's when I didn't like him. I didn't like him at that point. And like there's like a point where Kratos is like, watch your tone, boy. And I'm like, yeah, you better fucking watch your tone, kid.
Yeah. See, Ant was talking shit on me a little bit ago, but Ant's ready to beat some kids too.
No, but he was like, he was a pretty insolent little shit once he found out he was a god. And obviously like they did that on purpose. And
yes, because that's what a kid would do. A kid who's not even a teenager yet, they find out, holy hell, I have superpowers, basically. Like, I am not normal. I am above normal. And he gets really excited about it. Now, obviously, Kratos is like, God damn it, this is so annoying because
he's like, this is exactly what I feared.
This is exactly like
Kratos
literally
is probably going out of his mind. He was like,
God damn it, you're so fucking dumb. Like, this is exactly what I've been trying to protect you from this entire time. Amir, help me. And Atreus is like, nah, fuck that. He starts talking crazy to Sindri. Sindri's like, throughout the whole game, Sindri's been consistent in who he is. He complains about his brother and he talks shit on his brother.
Best character of the game, by the way. Sindri.
Easily. Also,
Brock is a very close second, but
even
Brock
going into Ragnarok, Sindri has grown on me so much. I'm not going to say anything, but Sindri as a character is literally, like Anthony said, I really do think he's the best character. And I didn't think this in the original 2018, but the more I play Ragnarok, it's Sindri for me.
Oh, I did. I was always look. Sindri stand account over here. Sindri is the best character in the game. Easy.
But there's a part where Atreus finds out that he's a god, and immediately after, the next time you see Sindri's doing his normal thing. He's being weird and ridiculous. He has his gag thing going on where he like everything disgusts him, but he's also going in on Brock and he's talking about their little sibling rivalry. Who makes the best work, right? Who makes the best weapons and armor? And as he's doing his little spiel, what he always does, again, this is just who he is. Atreus is like, oh, I'm tired of hearing about this little person nonsense. Like he literally says that, like verbatim.
He's like, I'm tired of these little people problems.
Yes, he just starts something like that. He starts going in on Sindri, like really mean. And at first, Sindri thinks that he's low-key kind of joking because he sounds like Kratos in a way. Like he sounds very like angry for no reason, almost solemn and just business, business, business. We don't have time for side quests. We don't have time for any of this. I need to be on my mission. So Sindri at first is thinking like he's kidding. And then he realizes, oh God, the little one is like changed. What the fuck happened? And
yeah, both Sindri and Kratos are looking at Atreus like, what? And Sindri's like, well, that hurt a little.
yes, he's like, that kind of fucking hurt.
And then later, Kratos is like, "Why did you speak to the
Sindri,
dwarf
like,
like
yeah,
that?
what, yes.
It was unnecessary and unkind." Which, coming from Kratos, I'm like, "Damn, this motherfucker really did change."
He changed
He
a
said
lot.
that someone was unkind.
Bro, this
Like,
whole game was just character development, the game. Like, I love that they focus so much on showing you how, because this is going back to Kenny's point, how much better both God of War 4 and the original trilogy are because of each other. Like, knowing who Kratos was and seeing how he is now makes God of War 4 so good. And like his relationship with Atreus is like so good because you know who he was. Likewise, going back and playing those older games and knowing where he's going to end up, those games become better now as a result of seeing what ends up happening in the end. So when he's saying all these things, he's basically chastising his son and telling him like, yo, be kind to people. There's no reason to just be mean for the sake of it because you're above them. Technically, like you are a god, right? Like that, I can't take that away from you. You do kind of have dominion over mortals. However, don't just abuse it, because that's what makes you a shitty person. And I might kill you, but that's what makes you a shitty person. And the reason why I hated gods, like he hated them, one, because of what they did to him, but also because like gods are just cunts. Like to put it
but
quickly.
also, just like I guess that's the interesting thing, is that he doesn't want him to become like that because one, he doesn't want him to become like how he was, but also he doesn't want him to become like those that he hated so much that he ended up becoming that person.
Yes, and he might have to kill. I said that
place.
under my breath, but I'm gonna just say it out loud now. I do think that this trilogy, I think it's gonna be a trilogy, obviously, but I think that this is setting up for. So the end of God of War 4 is you going to Jotunheim finally. After everything is said and done, you go to the land of the giants, the realm of the giants, and you see that the entire game that you just played was already written on some walls. Like it reveals that your wife, who's now dead, Faye was a giant, and she knew everything that was going to happen leading up to this point.
Love prophecy.
Giants are all about prophecies, which is why Odin is so afraid of the giants, because of Ragnarok is coming. Ragnarok is basically the end of all the gods, and it's the end of Odin. So he's trying to prevent that. So he like wants all the giants to be dead. Essentially, is like the main thing that's happening. And so Faye knew everything prior to you even playing the first scene in God of War 2018. And one of the last things that Atreus does not see, that Kratos sees, it's like really quick, but when the walls are revealing everything to you guys, you see Kratos is dead, or it looks like Kratos is dead. And
because Atreus is holding him in his arms.
Yes. Yeah. So it looks like a prophecy at the end is that Kratos is going to die, but we know from the original trilogy that just because something was prophesized or told to be like what the future holds or somebody's fate, it can be changed. And that's what the entire God of War 2 game is about, is literally you changing your fate because you were sent to hell. So you know, as a player, again, going back to Kenny's point again, like what makes the original games so good now, and what makes Ragnarok, or not just Ragnarok, but the new trilogy so good, is that you know, even seeing his foreshadowed death, that it's not set in stone. It can be changed, and it might come down to you against your son at some point. Because I can't help but go back to that one scene where Freya is really pissed at you for killing her son Balder, and Atreus is like, "Why is she mad at you? Because he was trying to kill her. Like, we did the right thing. We saved her." And he's like, "Yeah, but if it meant that I had to die so that you could live, I would do it." Kratos says that to Atreus. Like, if it meant that I die so that you could live, even if it had to be you killing me, because Atreus asked him, "Would you do the same for me?" He said, "Yes. I don't expect you to understand that." And so like, I was like, oh my God, like that is exactly what I was afraid of. I was afraid that I'm raising my killer. Like I'm raising the person. And that might be a certain type of peace that Kratos is secretly looking for anyway. Because I still think that Kratos' entire journey is atonement. The way he is raising Atreus, I think that he intended, before telling him that he was a god, he intended to raise this mortal, or raise this kid as a mortal his whole life. And that was going to be his atonement. Like, I did one good thing. Like, I kept this boy from being what I became, and I kept this boy from war. I kept this boy from seeing the worst of me and the worst of people, and like looking at like the way he told him, "Don't talk. Why'd you talk to the dwarf that way? Like that was so uncalled for. It was unnecessary. It was unkind for no reason." And I love hearing him talk like that. It's just so different from who he used to be.
I mean, that may. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, but you can jump in. You can jump in right there.
I mean, it makes sense because when Kratos saw the final piece of the prophecy and he saw himself dying or dead or being held in Atreus' arms like he was dead, he kind of had no reaction. And I imagine Kratos was either like, it's been a long time coming, or he was like, we can change that. We can change that.
Yo,
we
can change that.
To be fair,
you know.
To be fair, he does have a line.
You haven't seen one prophecy, you haven't seen them all, right?
Yo, you're fucked, Anthony. You are the devil. What the fuck?
Look, Kratos says in that game, death can have me when it earns me.
Yeah.
So, oh my god. That line?
One little prophecy isn't meaning shit to Kratos. He's like, if you want to earn me, come get me. I'm right here.
He's like those other three prophesized my death, and well, I mean, you know, I'm rubber, you're glue.
You got a problem? No problem.
Yo,
he's got no problem with your problems.
That line that Kenny just said, I am 99% sure when it happened to me in real life, I sent it on Discord to Kenny. I said, I'm pretty sure that when Kratos said death can have me when it earns me, I'm pretty sure I stopped what I was doing and I went right to Discord and started typing to Kenny. I was like, holy fucking shit. Kratos just said death can have me when it fucking earns me. Like, talk your shit. Talk that shit. Cause that is one of the most cocky things from somebody who has literally killed death. Like literally has killed death. He's killed Hades and one of the shitty PSP games, he's literally killed death and became death. So like, it's really cool to hear him say like death can have me when it fucking earns me. I was like, yo.
So it is also it's interesting that like this, you know, this character that doesn't actually exist in Greek mythology was interjected into Greek mythology in a way that, you know, more or less felt organic, even though Greek, you know, mythologies are they're rant all over the place.
Yes. Oh my god, they are.
And not only did he like completely disrupt like Greek mythology, but now he's in Norse mythology. And it's interesting because I thought that I didn't know as much as I do about Norse mythology until I played the game, and there were things that like started to make sense because like when you first fight Baldur, you don't know that he's Baldur, right?
You have no idea.
You have no idea that
he's called the Stranger.
He is called the Stranger, and like, you know, he tries to hit Kratos. I'm like, who's this scrawny kid?
Yeah,
Kratos is gonna fuck him up.
He starts
he hits
but you
Kratos.
don't move.
Yeah, and then he knocked him like into the roof, and then I was like, this guy must be a god. I was like, I wonder which Norse god he is, and it didn't click right then. Because like even in the course of fighting him, he keeps like reviving, but Kratos does too. So I was like, huh. But then it didn't click until you see Freya for the second time, and at that time you don't know that you just learned that she's Freya.
Yes,
right?
Because you don't even know that at first when you meet her.
And when she sees the arrows that are made out of mistletoe that
she freaks out about.
that Brock or Sindri gave Atreus, and she freaks out. That's when I was like, she's Freya, and I was like, oh, that other guy must be Baldur, because I knew like the invulnerability thing and like the mistletoe being the weakness, and I was like, that must be Baldur. And I kind of like, that's when I was like, oh, I think I know how the story's gonna go. I didn't know that Kratos was gonna kill Baldur, but you know, I mean, I guess I should have figured that because that's what brings about Ragnarok. But
so that's the real story of Norse mythology, that killing Baldur brings about Ragnarok. Like that's the
it brings about Fimbulwinter, and then Fimbulwinter leads to Ragnarok.
Okay, so I love this. I didn't know. So you know more about Norse mythology than I do. I know some things, like I obviously know that Odin is the god of all the gods and stuff like that. I know things about Thor and like his children and stuff. I didn't know that Freya. What I know about Freya was from Star Ocean until the end of time. She is she's the hardest optional boss, actually. She's fucking ridiculous. So I knew that she was the queen of the Valkyries. So I knew that part, because like in Valkyrie Profile, she's also represented as the queen of the Valkyries, the boss, a secret boss. In the Star Ocean games, you fight the Celestial Queen, you fight Lilith, and then you also fight Freya as like the last boss. So she's ridiculous. So when I found out that she was Freya, I was like, oh my god. if she's actually Freya, that bitch is a problem. Like immediately, I knew that she was a problem. I didn't know the extent because she seemed very tame in God of War 4. Like every time you meet her, she seems pretty tame. Like she can do a lot of cool things. But when I think of Freya, I think of grand. I think of like, you are that bitch. And then at the end of the game, when you kill Baldur and you see the stuff that she's doing to prevent you from killing her son, you realize, oh, she is that bitch. Like she was just literally holding back at every time you ever seen her, and she's not allowed to technically harm a person or something. But like,
yeah, she as far as you knew, she was the Witch of the Woods, which she did fit that pretty,
yes.
you know, like.
But come to find out, so I like the Norse mythology stuff. I'm learning Norse mythology things myself. I didn't know I didn't realize that Fimbulwinter, which is what you were experiencing in the beginning of Ragnarok, the game. I didn't know that like that is a real, real in quotations here. That is a real thing about that mythology, and that's really cool to know that now that we're not playing a story that is completely made up and contrived for the sake of God of War. It's actually, like you said, it's Kratos being interjected into mythology that already exists. And how does he fit into
how
this?
Ragnarok happens? Which is because, like, when I first played the game, I didn't think that's at all where the trajectory was going. I thought that it was, like you said, Kratos was here for the sake of being here, and they're telling his story in Norse mythology now. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna slay all the Norse gods now.
Right.
But then, like, when that wasn't his character, I was like, well, what is this story? And I was like, I guess it's a father-son story. And then, like, when you kill Baldur, I was like, oh, Ragnarok is gonna be the next game. I was like, this is like leading to Ragnarok. And I was like, that's really cool. And I was like, and then you're gonna slay all the Norse gods.
And then the third one is obviously going to be you killing Odin. We can, the writing's on the wall. Like you knew from the God of War, the first one, basically that Zeus was probably going to be like after God of War 2.
I mean, we'll see. I still haven't finished Ragnarok. I'm like close to the end.
This is
speculation. I haven't finished it. But I mean,
this is complete speculation.
I don't know if it's going to be like because Odin is different from Zeus in the way that Zeus just kind of like went with, like, Zeus is passionate. Obviously, he fucked the dirt, right? Like Zeus was definitely like, I'm living my feelings in the moment, and that is what that is, right? And like, despite his paranoia and all that shit, like he still was that kind of god. Whereas like Odin is very cold, calculating, and more than anything, he is charismatic. Because like, especially playing through Ragnarok, no spoilers, but yes. Like the way that Odin operates is terrifying, because like he can see a potentiality and he will manipulate you into playing out that potentiality without you realizing that he led you there. And I'm just like, that kind of and like all the while you think like, oh, he's cool. Like he's not that bad of a guy, right? Like, what is he?
Yeah, and Zeus was just an asshole from the gate,
like, right? And you like, that he's an asshole. That kind of person is scary because you don't really know how to like combat that.
Yeah, most people don't know how to combat that kind of a chaotic character like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, or if you watch House of the Dragon, the Clubfoot, I think is his name. They call him, but he like Lionel Strong or whatever his name is. Larry Strong, that's his name. So Larry Strong and Littlefinger are like these chaotic characters that they do things.
Is that the guy that's in the feet?
Yeah, that's the guy. Yes, that's the guy who's in the feet. Yep. So his name is Laris, which is like a combination of Littlefinger.
The fucking simp. Yeah.
Yes, it's cool because his name is literally a combination of Littlefinger and Varys. He represents both those characters in the prequel. But he is a chaotic character that does things, but you can't quite tell because he's manipulating people. But you can't tell where his true allegiances lie because he's all over the place. And he's manipulating you, but you don't know to what end. And it's kind of like what Anthony's saying. Well, Odin is like, he will manipulate you and you don't even realize the extent.
That's the thing. Even with the knowledge, knowing that this person is manipulative, because Mimir, everyone is telling anyone, or telling Kratos and Atreus that Odin is manipulative. Throughout both games, they're like, Odin is manipulative. So they know that Odin is manipulative. And despite that, he still successfully manipulates you. That kind of person is like, it's hard to fuck with that kind of person.
So I really like God of War 4 with Baldur because, he comes as a stranger. You find out that he's actually Freya's son really late into the game. And at first, Kratos is really annoyed by it, but I love how he controls his impulses and his anger that he used to have. Like, he would have been very angry about stuff like that. But in this game, in 2018, he's just like, why didn't you tell, like, he goes to Mimir, why didn't you tell me that he was Freya's son. And he's like, oh, I must have forgot. But then come to find out, Freya actually put a fucking spell on him to make it where he cannot talk about certain things concerning Balder and Freya. Literally, if he tries, he just resets. And Atreus notices it and starts asking him questions to try to poke around the spell to see like how far it stretches.
Yeah.
And Mimir literally, up until this point, he's been the smartest person in the world. Like that's what literally his title is, the smartest man in the world. But then when it comes to Balder and Freya, Atreus will ask him something and he will say some of the most ridiculous, non sequitur, like it just doesn't even make sense what he's talking about. He'll just say nothing essentially. And Atreus is like, God damn it. Like literally sad about it. Like, oh, you're not even yourself when you talk about these two. But that's all by design. And it's a really cool element of the storyline that as you play, you're just uncovering more and more things. And it makes sense because again, this new trilogy, new version of God of War is more about the story than anything else. Like the combat is still stellar. And we can talk about the overhauls to not only the combat, but like the upgrade system, weapons and armor being a thing, hilts and pommels and all this other things that you can do. That's an entire system that is incorporated that did not used to exist before. And that's really awesome. But I just love how story focused it is and how they do try to make it to be a cohesive story that focuses around actual mythology, but inserts Kratos into it and finds a place for him and his son to go into. Well, now you know his son is Loki. So that's like, you know, that's
even though some
huge.
super nonsensical things happen.
Yes. But we are dealing with
that's always happened.
Yes, and that's also
not excusing it because they should explain that shit. Like how the fuck Kratos got here in the first place.
I still don't know.
I want to know what happened to Greece.
I want to know what happened to Faye and to what happened to Greece.
Because like Kratos essentially destroyed the world. He destroyed the realm of Greece. It's like he destroyed all the gods that basically had dominion over all of like the natural phenomenon of the world. And
every time he kills a god in the original trilogy, a disaster happens. So he kills Poseidon. Poseidon's body drops into the ocean, and a fucking tidal
and the
wave,
ocean fucking becomes wild.
A tidal wave happens. He kills Helios, and the sun goes away.
The sun gets
it's eternal darkness.
Yeah.
He kills Hades, and now the dead are allowed to roam the world of the living because there's no one there to check them.
He kills Hera. There's no more vegetarian or no more vegetation.
By the time
no more vegetarians,
no more vegetarians.
He kills Hera. Right. There's no more vegetarians.
You are correct. But at the end of God of War 3, Greece is in a state of it's hell on earth. There's nothing.
It's pretty much going through its own Ragnarok. There's like it is apocalyptic.
It is.
There's no way that anyone can like no mortal person can survive in that world.
Yes.
And the way that game ends is like Kratos releases hope into Greece, and Athena wanted it because I don't know. I guess she was secretly evil the entire time. Sure, I'll take it. But
do you feel that way about Athena?
I don't know. Like, but that's the thing is that's why I was really done after God of War 3 because I was like, if this is where it's gonna go, I was like, this is dumb. I was like, Athena's secretly evil, or okay, Athena's secretly selfish, I guess, which is the same as essentially being evil. Yeah. So I was like, so Athena's the bad guy, not you, because you know Kratos is trying to redeem himself. He suicided himself.
Yeah, and also putting hope back into the world when Athena's like, give me the hope back. Like she wants it back for herself, and he's like,
it was too esoteric in its presentation for it to really like. It's fine if something is like esoteric and kind of open-ended and leaves things open to interpretation, but usually that's done well when there's like a concrete like set of events that's like, oh, this is what that meant. Yeah. Right. But like this kind of doesn't do that. I didn't really even understand that he released hope back into the world until like I saw that video and I was like, oh, that's what that was.
I just want to say that as well. I did not,
because like Athena was like, that power was meant for me, and I was like, what power? And I was like, oh, that's why Pandora's box was empty, because it had already been emptied.
Yeah,
okay,
he already had hope inside of him. And there was a little bit of some power friendship nonsense that was going on in that original trilogy that I probably just forgot about.
So which it's just completely off brand. It's not that it's bad, because Kingdom Hearts is, you know, friendship, light, but never goes out.
That's how it
darkness.
Starts.
Yeah.
This started off on a warpath, literally, and at the end it's like power of hope back into the. I was like, what? Like,
they really should have like emphasized like the power of Pandora's box and like the contents of it and like why that was so important, as opposed to just saying that it was so important. Because even with hope being released back into Greece, I'm like, Greece is still fucked. So like what happened?
Looked crazy.
What happened? Like the spirits of, like you said, the spirits of the dead are roaming free, and there are tidal waves like every other day. Like,
I
what?
wonder.
Like, how does Greece recover?
I wonder if at some point, now I have a lot of hopes for this new trilogy, the reboot. I am hoping that we do get to see a vision or something of Greece and like how fucked it is after, like what Kratos has done, and maybe that'll make Atreus look at him differently. Atreus doesn't understand the gravity of what his father did yet. He knows. Go ahead.
That's something interesting in that earlier you guys were saying how, Kratos is really trying to drill home to Atreus, like not to be like him, and trying to really raise him with certain values. But Atreus, at the end of the day, Kratos is Atreus' father. And as awkward and as weird as those relationships may be, Kratos is his role model, his idol. Like Atreus looks up to him, that's who he looks to, whether he wants to or not, whatever teenage phase he wants to go through, however it may be, at the end of the day, the idol, the guy that he looks to is Kratos. So as much as Kratos wants to train him to not be, I don't want you to be like me, Atreus, whether he says it out loud or not, wants to be like Kratos. So it's it
is obvious to us because we know how children are. This is what makes playing the original trilogy again so good, because we played it when we were kids. And we've grown up and we know what it's like to idolize our fathers or our parents, I'll say. Like, you know what it's like to look at an adult and say, I want to be like them. And then to get older and realize, oh, that probably wasn't the best thing or best person to idolize. Like, sure, our parents are our parents. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Let's just be clear with that. But like, there are things that you always will say, and I think every person who's ever lived probably can say this, that if I become a parent, I want to improve on what my parents lacked, right? Like, I want to do things differently. If I ever have a child, there are things that my dad did. My dad was very much like Kratos. So was Kenny's dad. We have a very, what's the word? Authoritarian, something like that. I think that's like what they call.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good enough word.
Yeah, they're authoritarian types. So they are just like Kratos. It's boy, it's sit, it's be quiet, it's obey me.
You will not speak again.
You will not speak again. This matter is finished. You like no talk back. I'll hit you if it comes down. It's just very that's how I was raised. So, growing up, I'm like, okay, at first I idolized my dad, but then I get older, I'm like, okay, I realize in areas where he could have been a better parent. Again, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but you realize as you get older, and Atreus being young, we know watching this young person, because we are basically the age that Atreus is when we played the original trilogy, like we know now that he definitely idolizes Kratos, even though Kratos doesn't want him to really idolize the things that he's done in his past. He wants to be like him now more than like.
Think about how common it is, like the old "my dad can beat your dad" thing, right?
Yes.
Like imagine Atreus, he's like, my dad can fuck all your dads up. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's what he does with Magni and Modi. When Magni and Modi like attack them,
he's like, we're gods. We could do anything.
And they fuck up Magni and Modi, and he's like, oh yeah. Like I feel like Atreus, even if Atreus doesn't say anything, is like, yeah, my dad can beat Thor. I mean,
that's exactly what he
can.
He is that kid that will get his dad into fucking fights because of his mouth. Like he'll just say shit like that, and then that'll cause friction between adults who are hot-headed. Because adults who are level-headed will be like, we're not just going to fight because our kids say you could beat me. Like that's ridiculous. But two hot-headed, egotistical men easily, especially in these times, like fucking ancient Greece, ancient Norse mythology worlds. For sure, Midgard, it can get popping for the littlest thing. Like I wanted that deer. I fucking wanted that. I'll kill you over that deer.
And I don't know to what extent like Odin or whoever in Asgard, told Thor like, hey, he killed an entire pantheon, so you might want to be careful.
Dude, I mean, like, what's really interesting is like how much. To what degree does everyone really know what happened in the first game?
That's actually interesting because Mimir calls him the ghost of Sparta.
He does know.
So it seems like
he doesn't know.
Creatures are aware of the fate of Greece.
Yes, because Mimir is a special case because he tends to know more than anyone else. But when he says it in the in God of War 2018, when he says it, it's almost like a reveal to Mimir too. Like he says it in a way that's like, oh, I've been traveling on the hip of the fucking Ghost of Sparta this whole time.
Right.
Like I know who the Ghost of Sparta is. I didn't know that you were that person.
But that means that like people,
his reputation,
creatures know, like they know what happened to Greece.
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know what they know.
I would love if they showed us Greece at some point. Like
that's what I'm saying. So that was my point. I want there to be a vision And I maybe wanted to change Atreus's mindset on Kratos. Because again, even now, at least where I'm at, Atreus doesn't know the extent of what happened to the old world that Kratos came from. He knows that his father killed his father. He knows that Kratos killed Zeus. He saw that happen in Helheim, and he pretended, for whatever reason, like he didn't see it. Kratos is like, you saw a man. He's like, I didn't see a man. He's like, you didn't see me literally killing a man. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let's go.
He's like, no, we were on that boat and it was flying. It's crazy.
Yeah, so he is trying to disregard what Kratos has been trying to hide from him, which is so interesting because it's right in front of him in Helheim. He sees it. And he pretends like he doesn't see it for whatever reason. But I'm like, yo, that's not even a full extent of what happened. Like, yes, he killed his father, and that is its own foreshadowing. But he also left that world and tried to just go to Midgard and just start a life. And they say that. Like, they blatantly say, you can't just come here and start over and have a kid and think that everything is hunky-dory. It doesn't work like that. Like, that's just...
Let him start over.
That's what he's trying to do. So it's really interesting. Once Atreus eventually finds out, I think somebody's going to show him the truth. Like, this is what your dad has done. Your dad has literally wrecked an entire world.
Here's the thing, though, right? Let that man start over. Do you guys want this to happen to you? Like,
true.
Let that man start over. You don't want to be. You don't want to be the next Greece.
Because, like, Odin sent Balder. Odin sent Balder after. Well, I guess he sent Balder after Faye.
Yes, he sent them after Faye, which is so interesting because the beginning of God of War 4 is very different once you know the ending. When he comes,
and then you understand because like Balder was saying like your kind, blah blah blah. I was like, damn, he really doesn't like Greeks,
right? Oh, this is racist.
But the entire time, I guess he thought that Kratos was a Jotnar. He was one of the Jotnar.
He thought he was a giant, and he was like, you're kind of small for one of
right. He said, I would expect you to be taller.
Yeah, I expect you to be bigger.
I was like, oh, you know who I was like, you know who I am. But that's not what it was at all.
Yeah, so. He comes there, he's looking for Faye, and Faye is Ashes, who happens to be on Kratos' person. So when his little god senses tell him like, this is the person you're looking for, he's right in a way. Like, you did arrive to the person, it's just that they are dead and on my waist. Really, really cool because the whole game focuses on when you get into one place. First, you think you just got to go to the top of this mountain in Midgard, and then come to find out you got to go to Jotunheim, which is a completely different land altogether, which makes you traverse a bunch of realms, and it expands this whole story. But at the end of the day, and this is not my original thought, but this is what the guy from the video that we watched said, and I agree with it. Faye's goal was to kind of repair the relationship that Kratos has with Atreus, which is why he ends up going through the entire story of God of War 2018. Is like,
which is crazy. She noticed, like, in my head, comedically, of course. Yeah. She was like, fuck, they're not relating at all. She's like, guess I'll die. That's the only way we'll have a relationship.
And we know, like, obviously Anthony's saying that jokingly, but we know that there will be more to what happened to her that we still have yet to be told.
What's kind of interesting, though, is it's possible. It probably won't. There'll probably be more to it. But it's possible what Ant said jokingly could be the thing if you think about it. Like, oh, she loves these two men so much and she wants them to have this relationship with each other this is the future she sees that repairs their relationship. If you think to what we already talked about when Kratos said, like, I would die even if you were the one to kill me. I would die so that you could live, just like what happened with Balder. It could seriously be that, like, she chose death because she saw that this would be the future to bring these two men that she loves together.
So I do think you're right there. I think that
more than likely, yeah. Because the Jotnar are obsessed with prophecy.
So when you put it that way, I agree 100%, right? Like, when Anthony was making a joke about, like, I guess I'll just fucking die, and then that'll make you two closer. But when you put it into actual narrative like that, 100%, I think that's what happened. I also think that low-key think that Kratos knows more than he's putting on.
Low-key. Sorry.
That's good. I think Kratos low-key knows more than he's putting on about the prophecy, and maybe he's walking to the end of his own life willingly. Like, I'm going through the motions. This is what me and Faye agreed upon. We agreed, like the Doctor Strange at the end of Infinity War, how many possibilities did you see? I saw 14 million. How many did we win? Exactly 1. And this is the 1. How many chances do we have for our son to live? Oh, this is the only way. Both of us have to die for our son to have a life and to like hopefully not be tormented and everything. Like, this is the only chance we have for him to live a real life, is by both of us dying, and I have to die first. You have to take him on his pilgrimage and train him up and make him ready for what he's going to have to face in the end. That would be a great story if they really thought that far ahead, and like that's actually what they're doing with this whole, the Giants have prophecies and stuff. I would love that. Like if they wrote it obviously better than I could.
Dude, you get to the end of God of War 3, aka God of War 6, and like you play through that whole game once again controlling Kratos, and every now and then like you have control. Like I don't know, but anyway, you get to the end of that one, and then basically you're in the final room.
I mean, I said it already. I said that I think I said it.
Yeah, you did say it.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. Anyway, you play through God of War 6, you control Kratos, you get to the end, you guys got to fight, and then the camera like pans, and then you just control Atreus, and you got to kill Kratos.
Yeah.
That would actually be heartbreaking, because Dude. You know what I realize is that like while you're playing God of War 4 and you're like, oh, this is about Kratos, it is equally about Atreus.
100%.
And like God of War 4 was definitely like Kratos' arc in like, I guess, his expression of I love my son.
Yeah.
And I will love my son to whatever extent that means that I like love my son. And
the tone of
Ragnarok with I don't want to spoil anything,
but you can tell that it's taken a narrative change by some of the things that happened very early on.
And Kratos still he surprisingly has an arc, and his arc in that game is like, I want my son to love me.
Yeah.
And
that's been kind of clear, honestly, even in 2018, that much is clear. Because something pointed out again by that YouTube video, which was so amazing. I didn't even notice this, but it kind of makes sense. Every time in a cinematic or a cutscene that you use Spartan Rage, it's only when Atreus is involved. It's something is happening to it. Like the elves will capture Atreus, and in a cutscene, you will activate Spartan Rage. Atreus will get sick.
Or like when you fought Baldur.
Yep.
Like Baldur's beating your ass, you're beating Baldur's ass. It's not until Baldur's like, who you hiding in that house? Guess I'll talk to them since you aren't saying anything. And then that's when Spartan Rage. Like,
yes. So it's always and only when it involves Atreus. So we know he loves him. And that last thing he says to him at the end of the game of 2018 about how, if it came down to me dying so that you could live, I would do it. I would do exactly what Frey's doing. Hands around my neck. I'm accepting death by you. Yes, that is the life that I choose to live, or I should say end.
And that's something I gotta give Santa Monica their flowers for, because that was like their arc through the first game, and God of War 4, and I was like, that's really good, and that characterizes Kratos in a way that was always kind of there and you suspected, but was never really expressed.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought maybe that would fall flat with Ragnarok, but like one of the places where the game shines is that it's like, it really is like that dynamic. Well, it becomes more dynamic. It doesn't ever stagnate,
Yes.
Because
and it's really cool that he remarries.
Oh yeah. Well,
like the idea that he remarries and has a new family, he didn't give up. Like Kratos, at the end of the original trilogy, he gives up and he tries to kill himself to, I guess, return hope to the world, whatever the fuck that means.
Still the third time?
Yeah, still kind of confused on that whole thing, but like he kills himself to return hope to the world, and you literally see it fly out of him and into Greece, but Greece is still apocalyptic. In this world, in the Norse mythology, in Midgard, he is now like, okay, I have gotten over what I've done. I'm trying to atone for it. I've married a new woman. I let her show me things that I didn't know. She softened me. And also I have this son who further softened me. And even though he puts out this image of being a super hard guy for his son's sake, we know there's a scene really early on in the beginning of God of War 4 where Atreus is down on himself and Kratos is behind him. And Kratos puts his hand out. He's about to put his hand on Atreus' shoulder, right? And Atreus is not looking, so he wouldn't even know that it's about to happen. And it's basically to console his son. His son is really mad about it. I forget exactly what the scene was, but Atreus is really, really mad at himself, and he's disappointed in himself because all he ever wants to do is impress his father.
I believe it was when they were hunting the deer, and that was after he shot the deer, and Kratos was like, well, you shot the deer, so now you have to kill the deer. And, Atreus was like, I can't. And he put the knife to the deer's neck and he was like, I can't do it. And Kratos had to kind of guide his hand to do it. Which, again, this is another one of those moments in retrospect, you're like, that's really great because he's Loki. Like, and the fact that Loki's like, I can't harm an animal because he can turn into animals.
Yes,
you're like,
that hurts him more than anything. That scene is really good because Kratos puts his hand out. He's about to touch Atreus from behind, and then he stops. He's like, I can't be soft with this kid. And I think it's now we understand he has this mission. It's like, I actually can't. I have to make you a certain way, unfortunately. Like, I would love to console you in this moment because you just had to kill an animal, and I know how much you love animals. You've always had an affinity for them since you were a boy.
But moreover, Atreus is he can sense that Atreus is disappointed in himself, that he feels like he disappointed his father.
Yep. Also, another great scene is when in the beginning they're killing like ogres and orcs and fucking all kinds of spirits and evil shit, specters and all types of stuff, right? It gets to a point in God of War 2018, where they kill people. Like actual human beings are attacking them, and Kratos kills them, and one of them is trying to kill Atreus. And the guy literally falls on top of Atreus, and it's a really suspenseful scene because you don't know what the fuck is about to happen to your son. And when Kratos finally gets to him and he like rages the fuck out, right? Because like Atreus is in trouble. When he finally gets to the guy and pulls him off of Atreus, mind you, Atreus' entire body is under this guy. So imagine a grown-ass man completely on top of your son, like his body is fell on top of him. Kratos pulls the guy up, and Atreus has his knife out that he's always had, like his hunting knife, and he killed the guy. And after he kills the guy, he picks Kratos picks up Atreus, stands him up because he's all like defeated at this point. He just killed a person for the first time ever. He killed a human. He picks him up and he puts his hands on his shoulders. And this time he's like, I gotta be soft with you now. Because like what you just did is traumatic. So he puts his hands on his shoulders, and Atreus can barely even look him in the eyes. And it's such a human moment because he's like looking away. You see Atreus' eyes averting, and he starts to sob, and you literally see tears coming down his eyes. And that is one of the not only most human things that you see between both of them, but it's also like, holy shit, at a very young age, this kid is now having to face the trauma of killing a human being and having to move on. Like at the end of the day, that was like early in the game too. So it wasn't even at the end of your journey. It's like, no, this is really early in your journey, and I still need you to carry on and do what needs to be done right after. I still need you to be strong. It's a really good moment. And it humanizes Atreus too, who we find out later is a god. It humanizes him in a way because it's like, damn, he never wanted to kill a person. He never wanted to kill an animal. He's now done both. And it sucks. Kratos doesn't want him to have to do any of this, but like, this is the world that they live in. I think a big part of the entire narrative of God of War 2018 is not repeating history, not wanting to repeat history. And it's funny because Anthony mentioned earlier how, he didn't intend to really kill Baldur at first. Like he didn't want to, but he ends up killing Baldur. And that's interesting to me because he came to this world trying to be different. He does so much to be different this time. Like, I don't want to be that guy again. And it sucks so bad to me at the end of this game where he ends up killing a god again, which causes Thimblewinter. He kills gods in the original trilogy. It causes all these types of cataclysmic things to happen. And you realize that history is repeating itself again. It's frustrating, actually. For Kratos, it's really frustrating when he kills Baldur. It's like, God damn it. I know that Kratos didn't really want this to happen again. Like, holy shit. When Freya's angry at him and she's trying to kill him, he doesn't even kill her. She actively is like, I'm going to try my hardest to bring the worst calamities, to kill you, to fucking torture you. She tells you exactly what her intentions are with you. And normally, Kratos would hear somebody talk like that and be like, I'll just fucking kill you then. Like, why?
Kill you first.
Yeah, like, why would I let you get the drop on me if I don't have to? He would just kill you. So when she says all these things, he has restraint at the end of the first game. And he's like, all right, well, whatever. Like, do what you got to do. But I'm going to walk away. And again, growth. But it's also frustrating because it's like, God damn it. Here I am again, killing a god in a different world this time. History repeats itself. And he doesn't want Atreus to repeat the same history that he had where, you become a murderous little fucking cunt. Just like privileged.
But I never, even though like Kratos even though Kratos has become essentially a murderous cunt, I never felt that way about him. I always felt like it was justified in like a weird way, I guess. Empathizing with him, obviously, like he doesn't care about the ramifications that killing the gods has
Yeah.
on mortal people,
Yes.
right?
Which in itself is fucked, but it is revenge. And
Right.
it's like, I get it. Like, I get it. If somebody made me
Yeah.
kill, let's say my mom and my sister unknowingly, like if you put a spell on me, I had no idea. And then when the spell dissolves, I realized that the two people who I just killed are my mom and my sister, two of the people in my real life that I love, the closest to me. There would probably no logical conclusion to what I would do after that.
Yeah, I mean, in Kratos' defense, it's not like he woke up one day and was like, you know what? I'm Hitler. Like
Yeah,
he didn't wake up and he wasn't like a horrible person and wanted to like do these horrible things. Like horrible things happened to him, and then like he responded in a way that realistically most people would respond.
Yes. Yeah, most people will respond, especially if we had the means to do so. And that's the thing, right? Kratos is a god. He has means above what we have. Like we have weapons, obviously, too, but it's a different level with him. He can cause disasters and calamities unspeakable. Like you used Hitler, and I think it was appropriate to use Hitler because he does Hitler the fucking whole world, essentially. He makes it unlivable for every mortal in Greece. Anthony's been saying, I still want to know what the fuck happened to Greece after he left because he makes it so unlivable. And that's something that we ourselves, it's interesting to say that because Hitler is a real person, but like we ourselves can't really do. Like in 2022, I could only cause so much destruction to the planet Earth by myself, like me as one person. But if I was a god, I would know no bounds. My capacity for destruction would know no bounds, and that's Kratos in a nutshell. It's unchecked anger, unchecked wrath, like unchecked war.
But then at the same time, was Kratos wrong for essentially relinquishing the natural phenomena of the planet to Earth from the gods? Because should the Greek gods really have controlled the sun and the ocean and the vegetarians?
No, not judging by how they were, and because they were terrible people. Judging by how they actually were,
the gods are normally fucking terrible.
And honestly, maybe what happened. This is we've been talking about Greece is in this terrible state, but for all we know, when Kratos released hope back into the world, maybe all life did die, right? Like maybe all the mortals that lived, they got wiped out, just like on some biblical shit with the flood. But what ended up happening is that hope started new life and everything started to return back to normal. And in the time that he's been in the Norse world in Midgard, if he were to ever go back to Greece, it would be like beautiful again, like Garden of Eden.
Modern Greece.
Yes, it would be like a beautiful, everything's back to, it's the beginning of creation. It's the beginning of man again. Like they're innocent. Everything has been, a clean slate has happened to Greece. That's what he actually accomplished. Or it could be what we said, and it's just like fucking darkness and death and chaos. And it could be either one.
It could also be interesting if you think about it in the way of these gods, right? Like these gods also have a controlling interest in their neck of the woods. And so when people in these new games talk about the destruction of Greece, they could be talking about how Greece is destroyed because they have freedom. Like maybe the humans are all there and they have freedom. There's no gods to govern them. And to the other gods, they're like, that's like the destruction of Greece because
they have to die for that. The gods have to die for that. So that's obviously not in their best interest. If you told me, a human, that I have to die so that squirrels can live, I'll be like, fuck you. Right? Like if you told me that in order for squirrels to live, all the humans got to die. Because think about it though. Let's put it in context. I don't look at squirrels as some kind of high on the chain of life, right? Like squirrels are just like, I could do without them. If they all died, I'm going to say it. If they all died, it wouldn't make my life any worse. I'm sure that the ecosystem would be fucked in some weird way because that's just how it works. But like, you get what I'm saying? I wouldn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Me, Fraser Smith, I personally, if all the squirrels just died out tomorrow,
kill all the squirrels.
It would be, for me, if it had to be me or the squirrels, it's humans. I would choose humans. So when the gods are trying their hardest to prevent their death, their destruction, their Ragnarok, I get it from strictly a survival thing, right? Like survival is what is ingrained in everyone, in every animal that exists, every mammal, everyone. We all live for survival, or unless there's something really off with us. But every human that is functioning at a regular rate, we are living for survival. And that's an interesting point too, is that they might be looking at what happened to Greece as a bad thing from a God perspective because they had to die for it in Greece. And it's a good thing for humanity. to relinquish that power back into just the natural flow of things. Like water should not be dictated by Poseidon. Like we should not have to pray to Poseidon for fucking water. That's something that should just be a freedom that every human has access to. Free water, like water should just be something that we just have. I shouldn't have to pray anybody for sun so that my crops can grow, or like I shouldn't have to do these things, right? And like if the gods are just feeling in a shitty mood, I guess this woman is being snatched up and kidnapped and she's now my wife and I impregnate her and I do whatever the fuck I want. I drown people just cause in wars, whoever prays me the hardest wins, like, cause I'm Aries and I'm an asshole. Like, oh, well, I like this side more. So these guys are going to win. Like if that's really what it comes down to, I totally get it that the gods in Norse mythology are like, yeah, fuck that world, because we're the government. We like our power. Like we don't want you to dismantle the system. It's just like real life. Like the government doesn't want to be dismantled.
Do Norse? I mean, I guess we're getting a little philosophical.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a philosophical approach.
Do Norse? Does like the Norse pantheon, like do they operate the same way?
I don't know. I don't know if that's like a confirmed thing, if they have to pray to like the god of war, because the god of war Tyr apparently is a god of like peace. Like he's considered the god of war, but not for the same reason that Ares was. Ares was like, I'm all for war. Tyr is like, I'm all for abolishing war, make sure that war doesn't happen. It's the opposite.
Yeah. Dare I say that the Norse gods aren't as terrible as the Greek ones, because they're still gods, but
yeah.
I guess that's also like a cultural difference. Like, did Nordic people like view their gods and through the same purview that like ancient people in ancient Greece did?
Yeah,
because like the cultural difference was like, oh, we pray to Demeter so that like we can have good seasons, as opposed.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question though, and we did get really philosophical here. But I like talking about things before they're over, before they end, because there's so much promise. And Kenny and I, one of the things about this podcast that I really, really love is that we will do like episode 1 of a new show, or episode 1 of a new anime, where there's so much promise, so much hope before it becomes shit, or before it becomes even greater than it is, right? But like a lot of times we catch things in the beginning because there's so much hope. Like think about Game of Thrones. You watch the first 6 seasons, right? And you see Cersei blow up that church and everything. And like, there's so much promise when you see Hold the Door, because you're like, holy shit, man. Hold the Door opens up so many possibilities. Bran is going through time and he's able to affect time.
Well, not to me. At that point, I was like, oh, there's no more hope at the bottom of this box.
So at that time,
that was me.
Okay.
That was
most of the internet was just like, oh, this recontextualizes the entire series, because we've heard about people called Bran the Builder, Bran the Great, and all this stuff, right? All these different brands throughout history. And I was like, oh shit, they could all just be Bran, the Bran that we know. They could all be him, and he's going back in time. The point is
so much time shenanigans.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that at that time, season 6, episode 5, Hold the Door, at that time, there was a lot of hope for the series. And so God of War is not finished yet, this new trilogy. And there's so much
hope. Well, if we know that it's a trilogy. But yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot of hope right now, and that's why it's great to talk about this now, as opposed to if we just did a podcast at the end, like when the whole thing is finished, like we know exactly where it ends. And as you can hear about the way we talk about the original trilogy, yes, the original trilogy is great for the things that we've mentioned for the last hour and 40 minutes, but like it's not. It is at the end. We agree that it could end differently. It could end better. It could be better.
Yeah, but they did something with it. Like how they did with the end of God of War 18. They took that story and they did something with it. With one name, they did something with it.
Yeah, they did.
So it's kind of what they did with the first 3 games. The first 3 games were the 3 games, and with this one game, they did something with that.
Yeah.
And now that like really is something that can be appreciated.
I do like that. That's like a little tool in the toolbox of writers that is interesting. Like the name Loki, like just revealing his name as Loki does so much for the story and does so much to recontextualize.
A lot of mischief.
Because you, as a human, you as a person, know the name Loki, right? It plays off the premise that you as a person outside of the video game know that name. And it's cool because when authors do that, like it's an interesting way to shortcut into like your feelings so that you, like, for example, spoilers for One Piece, but One Piece, when Blackbeard gets revealed, it's a shortcut and you go, because you're watching a story about pirates. So when Blackbeard, the pirate, you're like, holy shit, just the fact that his name is Blackbeard. If his name was just like John Jacob, you don't think anything about it. Because his name's Blackbeard, it holds this level of context and this level of weight that really draws you in. The fact that Atreus' real name ends up being Loki.
That's a good tie-in. The Blackbeard thing.
It draws you in and you're like, holy fucking shit.
Because the second I got to the chapter where they revealed Blackbeard, I was like, oh my God, this guy.
Yeah, me too. I was like,
problem. I even probably sent the panel to Gary, Medina, you. Like, I remember the panel where they show his whole crew. It's one of my favorites. It was right like around Sky PA. And they show his whole crew. And they have the names and the bounties and all of them, One Piece. I stared at that panel on my iPad for like 20 minutes. Like actually, because I had a really long commute. I was on a train. I had a really long commute to work. And I could not get past that panel. I just stared at it for so fucking long because it said Blackbeard on there, but then it also had the rest of his crew. And I just wanted to know, I was looking at One Piece has so much detail and everything. And I don't know. Oh, but that is a great tie-in because we know what the name Blackbeard holds in the pirate world. We know what the name Loki holds in Norse mythology.
And when you look at, just like what it does for the God of War, like when you look at One Piece, when you look at Blackbeard's introduction, like the chapters he gets in, first it's just this fat guy. You don't know who he is, but he actually endears you. Like Oda endears you to this random fat guy because he's talking about how dreams exist. Follow your dreams.
To the main character. So that
to the main character, he's endearing. He's talking about, follow your dreams, go to the sky. All these people are laughing at you, but like dreams are real. And so this guy is like, wow, this guy's really cool. He's endearing. And then it gets revealed that it's Blackbeard. And you're like, this is going to be some shit. Like the fact that that's his name, it recontextualizes things that you saw. And then if you remember going back hundreds of chapters before that, you know that Ace, Luffy's brother, is chasing Blackbeard. And it was mentioned briefly. It was like, Ace is chasing Blackbeard because Blackbeard did something to the crew. And so Luffy's brother is trying to kill Blackbeard. But you get endeared to Blackbeard. He seems like kind of a cool guy. But then you find out this guy's name is Blackbeard. And it just, due to what we know in real life, it just recontextualizes all of that. And
the same can sort of be said about Atreus, too. Like, you knew Atreus the whole game. And you do kind of fall in love with the kid. Like, he's bratty, but he's a kid. And you grow to like him because he asks questions that are so adorable, honestly, a lot of the times. Like, he's exactly, whoever wrote the script for him being a kid did such a good job. Like, I know everyone says, well, we were all kids at one point, right? Because like we don't have children, but we can speak on children. We were children at one point ourselves. I'm just impressed by the writer room for God of War that they really made Atreus believable as a kid. He's a very believable kid to me. Like like full stop. He's just believable. Everything he says, I'm like, a fucking kid would definitely say that, and I'm so annoyed about it. Like I would just hear him say things and I'm like, I'm so annoyed because that's exactly how, how kids do that thing. I always bring this up to Kenny, but I'm saying it now with Anthony here. Kids do this thing where they think that they're smarter than you. They get to an age and they don't realize that like adults are actually just kind of ridiculously smart because we live so much. Like we have so much experience on them and they don't understand the depth of
some of us anyway.
They don't quite grasp like the gravity of how much experience we actually have over them. So they'll do little things to try to be slick and coy with us that they don't think we'll pick up on. I always bring up the scene with Arya talking to Tywin, where Tywin says, "Careful, boy. I like you, but careful." It's like what you just said about Robb Stark potentially winning this war. You said it in a coy way that like you didn't blatantly say, "I want Robb to win." You said, "What if he keeps winning?" And it's like, it's like
it's clever. It's clever.
It's clever. You think you're smart, but you're actually like I'm fucking 50 years old. I'm a war general. I know exactly what you're getting at. You want, like, I get it. I get, because you don't feel in Harrenhal, you're like annoyed here. You're my prisoner, basically. But like, I get that you want to be free and you maybe want this guy to win, but careful. I like you, but careful. So that's kind of.
That's the thing. Like, when you are young and you truly understand what cleverness is, you think that cleverness is clever. But with some wisdom, you understand that cleverness really isn't usually that clever.
You're not as clever as you think you are.
You know?
You're just not, you're never as smart as you think you are. You're never as clever as you think you are. And you also just have this belief that no one is smarter than you, really. Like, you think that you can outsmart people. You start to smell yourself, as adults say. Yeah. So that's really cool.
The other thing that's cool is, like, as we know in most depictions of media, right? Loki is always depicted as a villain. So the fact that we're growing with Loki as a child, like, where they decide to take this story is going to be really cool, because our expectations outside of God of War is that Loki is the bad guy. But like in the next game, Ragnarok, which is out now, as far as we know, the end of the game is going to be us fighting Thor and Odin and stuff, who are usually depicted as the good guys.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that, about you saying that and that whole purview is, okay, right? This might be a bit of a rant, but it comes full circle. When in God of War 4, when Atreus and Kratos go to Alfheim, the realm of the elves, right? They get introduced to, basically, the realm is at war, the dark elves versus the light elves, right? And you hear light elves, you hear dark elves, you will assume the dark elves are the bad guys. And you get to Alpha, and the dark elves are pretty much like trying to lay siege to the light elves. And you see eventually you see like a dark elf killing a light elf who was defenseless. And this makes a comment about it and is like, why'd he kill him? He wasn't, he didn't do anything to him or whatever. And Kratos says something that this is where I'm like, that is a wise thing to say. Because normally you'd be like, yeah, why did he do that? That wasn't very nice. But Kratos is like, we don't know the full story. We don't know why this war is happening. We don't know who really are like the antagonists of this war.
Yeah, that's
you end up getting an answer in Ragnarok that I won't say neither here or there who was right, but Kratos was very wise to say that.
Yeah,
like, because you never know who the true villains or who the true heroes are, and usually in reality there aren't ever heroes or villains. It's always just very complicated. And in that vein, right? We do usually understand Odin and Thor and like the Aesir gods being the heroes, and like Loki being the villain. But right, look at it for like, if you try to change your perspective and realize that the writers have essentially shifted your perspective, right, to Odin and Thor and the Aesir gods, Loki is a villain. Like they look at Atreus as a villain because what they know about him, what Odin knows about him currently, he is a villain. So like to them, he is still the villain. But because we've grown with these characters as the hero of this story, that's not how we see it.
Question for you, because you know a bit more about Norse mythology than I do. So
I don't know that much, but
I know a lot of it from the MCU, from Marvel.
Okay.
Thor and Loki are brothers in the MCU. Is that actually how that goes in Norse mythology?
I don't think it. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like it could be interpreted that way, and so that's how the MCU did it. Like it could be interpreted that way.
Let me say something.
I don't know them of being brothers though. Like I always know that Loki is essentially like the chosen champion, the like prince of the Jotnar.
I know that Loki.
That much is always true.
I know that, and I also know that he is something about like an ice giant. They call him. He's like an ice giant. He's adopted essentially. Like he's not actually Thor's like blood brother. We came from the exact same.
Yeah, like even in the MCU, like they're not
literally
related.
Right, they're not literally, because I mean, look at how different they look also. But like they're not literally like we came from the same exact parentage, but they were raised as brothers, and Loki being like this adopted person. So I wonder how much of the MCU is based on actual Norse mythology as well, because I know Odin is a part of the MCU. Like Odin died and everything. Like Ragnarok was a movie. They have a sister. Sister comes up and she kills the dad and shit. Like there's a whole.
This is where like things get several like stages of remove, because like the MCU is okay. So the Norse mythology is already a thing that can be misinterpreted, interpreted in a bunch of different ways. That was then interpreted into this world for the MCU in a comic book, which is now being interpreted into a movie, into like a cinematic universe. So like there are liberties taken at each step that like who really knows. Like think about Hercules, the Disney movie, right?
Oh God.
Forever I thought that Hercules was the son of Zeus and Hera. And then like come to find out Hera hates Hercules. And I was like, huh? I was so confused. And I was like, oh, that's because it's not her son. And she hated Hercules because he was yet another bastard of her husband who was constantly cheating on her.
Literally the story of Catelyn Stark and Jon Snow.
So, like I don't know. Like I'm not a mythology expert. I'm just interested in it enough to know some stuff. But I'm not a mythology expert to know like where those disconnects could have happened. To like, I'm sure there's some way that can be seen as true that they're brothers, but
Or
I
like they
don't.
might weave some weird plot twist. I'm just looking
Yeah,
for plot twists. But let's get off of that because I don't want to talk about Ragnarok at all, really. And I do want to talk about the combat. We haven't really talked about like how it feels to
the
actually,
gameplay
yeah,
itself.
like the actual playing God of War. So let's spend a little bit on that before we get out of here. And also, while we transition, I want to give a shout out to everyone on our Patreon real quick. Thank you guys so much for supporting the IMNerd Podcast. I hope you're enjoying this episode. It's already been an hour and like 45 minutes. So I'm hoping that you guys are liking this discussion on honestly one of my favorite games. And Anthony's played pretty much all of them as well, except the side story. So clearly he likes it as well. And Kenny's watched a lot of it. So we all have a little grip on God of War. But
Yeah, I've never beaten a God. I've played the first 3,
Mhm.
but I've never beaten any of them. They were just like games that I've played.
Yeah.
But yeah, never. I might actually go back and maybe like do like a stream through and
I
like
want to
stream all
play
3
the
of them.
first 3 again because as I was watching that guy's video, he has gameplay footage from the first 3, and I was like, "Damn, I don't remember." These games look pretty good, like for their time, and even for like playing it again right now because they've been remastered. I think I feel like they're totally playable again. Like I'm not asking myself to go back and play some sprite based game, right? Like. And there's nothing wrong with sprite-based games, but like if you have if graphics are an issue, which they are for a lot of people, graphics are like tantamount to what makes a good game. But like these games are perfectly fine to play, especially 3. Like 3's on the PS3, it looks very good compared to 1 and 2. But even 1 and 2, I was like, yo, they look pretty decent. Like they look playable again. Like I could totally download them on Steam and run through them. So I'm not surprised that you're saying that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have fun. I had it in Cerberus. I'm not playing those games again.
Not the trauma. All right. Anyways, we got Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garen, Xavier, Hylian, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Giovanni Avelos, Andre Reynolds, CJ, Dubk Dad 1, Dan Vrabel, First to Home, Dalis Ferneris, Estat Akuma, Mitchell Nels, Midwest Gaming, William Shapiro, Dimitri Safirdas, Vince Marquette, Dallas Bailey, Roz Weiss, Nick Stango, I don't know why I said Stangle, Nick Stango, Hansel, our 2-time national champion, Vincent Zen, Sarah Maria, Sunny Top Cut Podcast, Alex Ahern, Philip Campa, Jalen Haskins, Arale Melfi Slump, Dominic Couch, and Kang Petty. Thank you guys so much for supporting I'm Their Podcast. We really appreciate it. As we always say, it goes a very long way. All right. The actual gameplay, right? God of War is like Prince of Persia, but better because Prince of Persia is known for having puzzles and like...
Wait, the original trilogy? You're saying, or 20?
Just God. I just think God of War in general.
Oh, okay.
God of War, Prince of Persia, because they all were around the same time. There was like Assassin's Creed.
Was God of War also? I mean, was Prince of Persia also fixed camera, like Sands of Time?
I don't remember if it was fixed camera. Like
I feel like it wasn't.
I don't remember. I always link them in a way that you're a character going through and solving puzzles, but also like there's combat. There's like that Soul Reaver element from if you play PlayStation 1, really aging myself there, but beat 'em up style that you get swarmed by enemies.
Soul Reaver. Tell Kenny to play those games. Take it
back.
Yeah.
But yes, so I really liked the original combat because I stopped playing God of War 2018 because I hated the change so much. Again, difficulty problems. But I was so used to a third-person zoomed out view of the whole room when I was fighting. So I was never back attacked. I could always see every enemy. Dodging was easy. Blocking and parrying was easy. Magic using runic or whatever was easy. And I generally just enjoyed the first trilogy a lot. You had a jump button, and the way you basically develop your characters that over time, as you kill enemies, like this red energy shit flows into your body. And that's essentially what you use to upgrade your skills and unlock new things. They completely overhauled it in God of War 2018 to where now you get like actual armor. The armor has effects. You get pommels for your weapon. So like your axe has a pommel, which is like the little part at the bottom that you hold it by. And it gives it's like keyblades. Like actual keychains on the bottom of a keyblade change the entire look of the blade, but they also give it special properties. And so Kratos, taking some inspiration from Sora, literally gets like, oh, if you have this pommel, when you do fire damage, it'll be increased fire damage, or it'll build up faster, or it'll the immolation will be like much, much quicker. There's all these different things that happen now that were never a thing. And the way you get different elemental attacks, you get a light and a strong, and there's like 10 of each. There's so many. You have multiple weapons too. So there's like axe, and there's the Blades of Chaos. And you've always had multiple weapons in the other games, but now not only do you have multiple weapons, you have a side character, Atreus, in God of War 2018. Again, not talking about Ragnarok, but in 2018, you just have Atreus and you get to literally develop both of their skills. You get to equip them with armor, and it tells you, because you have choices, like this armor will make it where, for example, one of the best armors in 2018 is like your life constantly goes up. It's evolved these armor. Your life is constantly increasing, and you're like immune to this mist shit that kills you in this one realm. And it gives you like high cooldown on your spells. So that's another concept. Before you used to have MP. You just blatantly had an MP bar, just like Kingdom Hearts. You would have a blue bar. It was actually the color blue, and you would use a spell, and it would go down an amount based on what the spell was. So if you use like a fire spell, it's like, oh, that's pretty weak or whatever. It only goes down a certain amount. But if you use a thunder spell, it's like, well, we consider thunder to be ridiculous in this game. Zeus being Zeus, it will take a lot of it. And when your MP went to 0, you just had to find a chest to refill it, and that was the only way to refill it. Or sometimes enemies would drop it, and it would come into your body. You would get a little MP. In this game, you have unlimited MP. In like 2018 and going forward, you have unlimited MP. There's no such thing. But what you do have is a cooldown on your spells. So you can do a spell, a light and a heavy spell, and they each have an actual number of seconds that will slowly go up, and you can use it again. And your armor dictates how fast your cooldown is. So it's really cool conceptually because you can do different builds. And that's what I'm kind of getting to now. In God of War 4 2018, you can make Kratos however you want him to be. So I'm always a Vanguard type of player in everything. And Final Fantasy 3, for example, I'm a warrior class. Like I choose warrior is the way I usually start the game off. I don't start off as Black Mage, even though towards the end, I love Black Mage, I love Red Mage and stuff like that. But in the beginning, I like to just attack because I don't want to use MP because you have so little of it when your level's low.
That's true.
In the beginning of God of War, I felt the same way. I was like, well, my cooldown is so fucking high. I don't really care about developing my runic too much. I'm not going to focus too much on cooldown. I'd rather focus on just strength. So I put everything into strength in the beginning. But by the end of God of War 4, now everyone has their own way of playing. Everyone has their own builds. But at the end of God of War 4, I realized very quickly, magic is fucking busted. It is just so.
As always.
It is just not okay, especially endgame. It's like something. It's always something about fucking endgame magic and like everything. But endgame magic with high like when your cooldown is like quick, certain spells I got them down to 18 seconds. Honestly, bro, 18 seconds is I can spam it. If you tell me I could do something every 18 seconds, when I could, so it's not that I can do it every 18 seconds alone because that is already fast. It's also that I can do 3 other spells that all have their own individual cooldown after I do the 18-second one. So if you do it right, you do the one that has an 18-second cooldown, then you do another one, the heavy one that has a 40-second cooldown, then you switch weapons and you do the other 2, and they have a 60-second cooldown.
Your spell rotation as MMO players.
There you go. So you can have a build. My in-game Kratos build in God of War 4 is ignorant as fuck. He just spams spells, and then when all the spells are in cooldown mode, then I do another thing that you have, which is I forget what they call them, relics, I think. But they're like, you press L1 circle, and that's a whole different mechanic that's introduced where L1 circle for me slows down time. And it's maxed out, so it slows down time for quite.
The one you had.
It's really ignorant. You literally, it doesn't
What do
matter.
you use?
Well, I mean, first I can say that it is cool that you can build Kratos however you want, except you can't. Kratos doesn't have a build where he shows his titties, but you know that's
that should be a thing.
I think that's really sad. You know, they're like they're like we're covering up the goods constantly, but I get it. He's got a son. It's a family friendly game. Got it. Whatever. I'm past that.
I don't know about family friendly, but yeah, it is friendlier than it used to be. There used to be a sex scene in every. Well, not literally. But
right, he's got a kid now.
There used to be a sex mini game in every single God of War before this one. Every single one.
And I'm glad they got rid of that. But,
yeah, cringe.
But it's funny that Fraser is saying that he like worked more towards magic. I actually
at the end.
Really, toward the end. Like we kind of had like opposite trajectories because at the beginning I was like, oh shit, these runes are cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got so like into like the mechanics and like the combos that I want more towards strength at the end. Okay. And 100% is like I guess challenging myself to see like how well can I pull off these combos.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because at the end you have so many more mechanics, and things to use because your skill tree is maxed out. You have everything. The world is your oyster now. All your skills are unlocked, and they all can. One of the things about God of War that we really love about the combat is how fluid it is. I mentioned it very early on. It's very well done. It's always been well done too, honestly, like always. That's something that I think has made it such a renowned game because the story is the story, but the fucking combat has always been really well done. And now that I've replayed 2018, I realize, holy shit, this is even better. Like the Leviathan Axe is actually as insane as Anthony made it out to be.
Once the Leviathan Axe is so good.
Once you know how to use it, it's fucking absurd.
And once you like start getting into like combos and weapon switching between combos, it's just like, and I will praise the combat now because when we do the Ragnarok video, I will have very choice words.
Okay, so you feel it too.
A lot of people do. It's different.
I didn't look at any reviews or I didn't see anything. I tried to avoid everything
it got so frustrating that I had to go and find a subreddit.
Okay,
like,
so
I have to make sure that I'm not bugging and it's not just me.
So just now, I have been enjoying my playthrough to Ragnarok a lot. I love it because I think that this one is even more story driven than I think 2018 was. Like, it's just crazy, but it is. Like, there's way more cutscenes. There's so much stuff that I really, really love about that game. But there is a change in combat, and we will talk about that when we get to it. But I thought that I was the only one, and that's kind of what I just wanted to say. I thought that
you're not bugging.
I thought maybe I was tripping, but for me, I just finished 2018 a week ago. So for me, I literally was using a PS5 controller. Right, I have a PS5 controller in my hand. I'm playing God of War 4, and I remember what it feels like to do everything. My fingers are attuned to it, and then I go into Ragnarok, and I was like, something is off. And I went to the options. And I was like, I'm looking at everything. I'm like, what did I do in 2018 that made me? Because I did change things around. Like, instead of holding circle, I do mash circle. Instead of like the camera moving at a 5 for how fast the camera moves left and right, up and down, vertical, horizontal, I put my shit up to 8. I need my camera to be quick. That's how I play games.
That's fair.
So I did all these tweaks, and I was wondering, I was like, did I not realize how much I tweaked 2018? Because it took me like 2 years to technically play 2018. It took me 2 years. So I was like, maybe I don't remember all the things I changed in the original game of 2018 that I need to change.
I mean, again, I played 2018 at Give Me God of War, hardest difficulty, beat it at that difficulty. There was one part of the game with like some wolves as a side thing. I was like, my life is a mistake. What am I doing here?
Exactly,
but like I got past that, and those wolves, and like you know how like traumatic that experience was, is that I remember the wolves and I don't remember why I was there. I just remember wolves. I just remember like wolves, and I was.
We all remember the wolves, and
everyone remembers the wolves. But aside from that, the combat was great, and there was a lot about it that I loved. And it really made you. I guess what I liked about it the most is that like the first 3 God of Wars were hack and slash, right? So in a sense, like
not
kind of mindless. Like
there was no strategy. If I'm being honest, I didn't have to strategize how I fought in the original trilogy, but in 2018, you actually are forced to.
Right, and what I love about, I guess it's interesting that like a studio that is used to make like their prize game was a hack and slash, but now they made like a more focused combat experience. They took like their hack and slash expertise and like applied it to like this more focused experience. So you kind of got like the best of both, because like, usually a game like that, you get like 1 or 2 enemies and they find a way to make that like challenging. But in this case, in the case of God of War 2018, you would have like 5 enemies, or you'll have like 3 melee enemies and like 2 ranged enemies.
Dear God, yes.
And like that's not, I guess it's not really something that you normally, like that dynamic isn't usually like present in a lot of games that have like a more focused combat like that. Like, let's say like Last of Us or something, right? So you get like a more unique experience with God of War 2018, and I really, really enjoyed that. And like the axe being like as slow as it is, at first I was like, oh, it's kind of slow, but it's strong. But then getting the Blades of Chaos, I was like, oh, these are really fast and do less damage. So I see the balance here, and I thought that was great. And like just overall, the experience was great. Now again, that's the last time I'm going to praise the combat, because Ragnarok, when we get to that podcast,
so
it's going to be
let me jump in and piggyback off of the 2018 conversation. I like now in hindsight how they gave you the Blades of Chaos in the middle of the game, because they forced you to use the axe for a very long time, and they make you, the axe is a strategic weapon. You can throw it and freeze an enemy. They show you that in the very beginning. Like you can literally, so if there's like 4 enemies and one of them is big and he's kind of a problem and the other ones are like whatever, you can literally throw the axe at the big one. He will be fucking frozen, and then you can use your actual hands and feet to beat the other ones while the other guy's frozen. Then you can pull the axe and then start fighting the big one after the other 3 are frozen. That's like a very beginning of the game strategy that they introduced to you. And that stays with you because you're forced to use the weapon for so long. If they gave you the Blades of Chaos in the beginning, everyone
would only use the Blades of Chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. With Blades of Chaos, and we would have never really learned the axe for how great it actually is. So, in a weird way of forcing a linear playstyle on you, like it worked. It worked really well, because then in the middle of the game you get the blades, and then like Anthony said, when you go to Helheim, you actually can't even use the axe anymore. Now you're forced to now use only the blades. Your axe doesn't work anymore. So it's
unless you want to really play on hard mode.
Yeah, unless you like want to bounce off of ice enemies for some strange reason. But yes, you basically are forced to use the Blades of Chaos for a good portion of the middle of the game, and then you can choose after that. Like after that, you can choose, and then it gets to the point where you have to use both. There's a boss fight in 2018 where there's an ice giant and a fire giant. And one of them is completely immune to the Leviathan axe, and one of them is completely immune to the Blades of Chaos. And I thought it was a fucking fantastic fight, because I was, up until that point, I'll be honest, I actually wasn't using both weapons quickly. I would switch like when I wanted to, but I didn't realize how fast I could weave, like pressing left directional stick and right directional stick, how quick Kratos can switch between axe and Blades of Chaos until that fight. That boss fight, I think, was meant to teach me that. It was meant to teach me, like, holy shit, this fucking ice thing just moved in my way, and I had the Leviathan axe out hitting the fire one, but now I have to quickly switch to the Blades of Chaos because I'm bouncing on this fucker. So it was like really, really fast combat. And after that fight, after I beat that boss, I was like, oh, this is how I can fight now, period. Like I can
because one of my like favorite, I guess, just kind of course of action to do combat with is like starting with the axe. You throw the axe, it does like that this long spinny one on an enemy, and it like lands in them, right? But while all of that is happening, Blades of Chaos it up, just fuck someone up with the Blades of Chaos, and then immediately switch back by recalling the axe and doing like that jump attack.
Yeah, the R2 one.
And then start going back with the axe. And like just doing that in and of itself is just nice, you know? Like it really feels cool. It feels good.
Knocking enemies into the air with the axe, which is really quick, because like the axe knocks enemies into the air by just pressing R2 once. You just press it once, and he just like swipes up, and enemies are in the air, and then you can immediately switch to the blades, and then he just starts slashing them in the air. And I love how, I like little things. So the fact that Kratos lifts his head up when the enemies are in the air like that, and like starts slashing at them, and like his arms are normally if you press R1, the attack button, he will just like swing them in front of him like this. But then when you literally slap an enemy into the air, he like starts slashing upwards, and it like, you don't have to do anything with the direction. He just knows. And I just love really cool programming like that, just to see that.
Yeah, like, they really did make it like super focused, and they made it to the point that when I started playing Ragnarok, I kind of was like, fuck the Blades of Chaos. I really didn't use the Blades of Chaos until I realized that there were enemies that I just they're too quick.
Yeah.
And I had to use them. But like, honestly, my preference is the Leviathan axe.
Yep. And I'm just gonna agree with you, because without getting too detailed into the Ragnarok conversation, I have been playing it the same way, where I only use the Blades of Chaos for very quick things, and I use the axe for everything else. And I want to say that is a design choice, because there are certain enemies that just move way too quick, and honestly, your short range with the axe, I just feel like it doesn't cut it. Like those little fucking scary things, I don't know what they are.
Right, it doesn't.
It literally doesn't. Like the axe doesn't. I swung at them.
The little salamander thingies?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to use the Blades of Chaos on those.
I feel like
there's no way you can beat those with the axe.
So I think it's I don't think it's like they thought that we could just choose to use the axe the whole game or the blades. I think that they literally are forcing your hand and be like, you basically can't really beat this thing, these little fucking creatures, without using the blades. And that is,
which is fine.
Yeah, because in the first game, they literally made me use an axe that I hated at first until I loved it. And I would not have loved it, and I would not have used it if they gave me the Blades of Chaos from the beginning. If I got the axe halfway through, I just wouldn't have used it.
That's what's so cool, because it's interesting. Gamers, and not just gamers, people in general have such strong opinions about things before they even know what their opinion is. Like, people just form opinions on things without knowing what the fuck they're talking about, right? So like you guys said, if you got the Blades of Chaos in the start of the game, you would have never a lot of people would have never really experienced a whole section of the game that is really fun and that they think is fun.
Yeah.
But like, there's people that'll just ignorantly be like, and it's all of us will just be like, no, the axe sucks and it's not fun and it's bad game design or what. Like,
Yep.
it's so interesting. But then, like, sometimes the design studios, if they're really good, they force something on you that is going to make you uncomfortable because they know that you're going to like it, even though you're telling them you don't like it. And then eventually you're like, holy shit, I really do like it. And that's just something that I want more people to realize is like, everything you don't like, you might not like it as much as you think you don't like it.
Yep.
Like, I fucking said that in a weird way.
But I get what you mean, because it's just that people in general don't really like change. So I came from the original trilogy, playing the Blades of Chaos as the primary weapon. And again, those games have a ton of other weapons, all of them. Every single one of them. God of War 1, you have a great sword and the Blades of Chaos, and that's it. But then after that, 2 and 3, you have a ton of different weapons, right? So
Yeah,
new weapons are not like an unfamiliar thing, but you always started with the blades. And so the change here is that you don't have the blades in the beginning, and I'm wondering what the fuck is going on. You're forcing me to have a different camera angle, but you're also forcing me to use a completely different weapon that's not like any other weapon of the other franchises either. Like, it's not like anything in God of War 1, 2, or 3. It's just completely different. It's a fucking boomerang, for God's sakes. But like, it is so much more than that, because another thing that we can kind of talk about a little bit too. So the combat, fantastic. Fluid, amazing. Switching between weapons, runic, cooldown, builds, amazing. Puzzles are fucking cool as shit to me because they use the weapons, and you need to have a full understanding of how the weapons operate to do the puzzles.
Okay,
Like,
here's where me and Fraser are gonna differ.
oh shit.
The puzzles are ass.
I love them.
Maybe I shouldn't say they're ass. Like, the puzzles, it's not that the puzzles are bad. It's their implementation is bad. I personally think the way that, like, and I've never liked God of War puzzles. And I guess I didn't like them as much before because it was a fixed camera, so you could see everything that you needed to. So the chance of like misinterpretation was like much lower. But like God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok especially, there have been times where I'm just like, am I stupid?
I thought so about Ragnarok a lot, by the way.
And it really is like, I guess because I'm a classic Zelda player, my philosophy on how good puzzles are run is you are presented with either all of the pieces at like each stage. And so like, I know what like the next thing I have to do is, I just don't know how I have to do it. Whereas like with God of War puzzles, I'm just like, what the fuck is the next part of this puzzle? And then like I can't find it for a while, and then eventually I find it. I'm like, okay, yeah, that.
You know what I like though, to kind of go against what you're saying a little bit. I like the use of Mimir and Atreus as narratives to help you with the puzzles, because they do. Some of them are like, am I fucking dumb? What am I doing here? I have no idea what I'm supposed to do in this room, right? And then after a while, they give you a little time before they talk. But after a while, Mimir was like, all right, brother, why don't you look over there at that lever? And I'm like, wait, what?
I personally like. I think it's great that is there, but I hate having to rely on that, because like, I don't want someone pointing me in the direction of a puzzle. But I want to be able to solve the puzzle. But if I don't know what the next part of the puzzle is, then like I can't do it.
I can understand it from your perspective too, but I do think that it makes sense narratively that like you have the smartest person ever on your waist, and a little boy who can like crawl in a little spaces. He's like, hey dad, maybe hoist me over there, and then like you put Atreus in a little hole and he runs over and does something. Like I enjoyed the camaraderie. I guess we didn't really talk about that much, but I think Mimir and Atreus also, like on top of the puzzle solving stuff, I think that those two characters existing on your journey, because this is another thing. The other God of War games you go through solo, you don't have anyone to talk to. Kratos is just like attacking things, going through puzzles by himself. He's apparently just a super smart guy in the first trilogy because he just solves all the puzzles with no help. But in God of War 2018 is more realistic. It's like, no, you had fucking help. You have a guy that literally knows technically everything, right? And then you have a little boy who also happens to read a different language that you don't understand at all because his mom taught it to him. And you have such a fucked up relationship with him that you don't even know these things about your boy. Like, you were surprised that he speaks this language. So I like a lot of for the narrative's sake, the puzzles make sense when Atreus goes up to something. He says, summer, autumn, winter, spring. But that's not the right order. And then you have to figure out well, what the fuck is the right order? And so like you move the things around. I just like it from
that one's fine. That's fine. I hate when, like you said, like you're doing a puzzle and you haven't figured it out in like 5 minutes, and then like either Mimir or Atreus is like, hey, obvious answer over there. And then I'm like, I didn't even know over there was over there.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
That can be frustrating. I totally get it. I really, because before in the first trilogy, the puzzles are just kind of like, they don't actually do anything for the story. They're just kind of like, just do this because this is a game, and games need to have more elements than just attack. But in God of War 2018, they are narrative. Like Tyr's Temple is a fucking giant puzzle in itself. Like the entire thing, not just like when you actually get inside Tyr's Temple at like close to the end of the game. Like the entire premise of the temple itself is a puzzle. Honestly, the entire Isle, or was it the Lake of Nile, whatever they call that place, the Lake of Nine, that entire lake is a puzzle in itself. And I really love how you guys talk to spirits. And there's just more dialogue. Like there was just no dialogue unless Athena decided to randomly phantom show up and be like, yo, bitch, you're not doing what I asked you to do. What are you doing? Like now,
yeah, whereas like now, like if we're in a boat or we're on
the boat talks are
sleds or whatever, I won't I'll reach a destination and just kind of circle.
Yeah, you won't
until
stop. Yeah, you don't want
until
to
the
stop
dialogue finishes.
Me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I've learned to do that because one time he cut the story. He's like, "We'll finish this later." I said, "No, I want to hear
like,
that."
No. Yeah, get back on the boat. We're finishing this story.
I was mad as shit one time he stopped talking because I didn't realize that if you dock, like that prompts him to say, "Okay, let's focus on the mission now." Like eyes up.
Yeah.
Like Kratos will literally say, "Eyes up." I'm like, damn, this is too real. This is a little too real. Like I wanted you to keep talking about what we were talking about in the boat. But all of these things make this game way more cohesive, way more realistic, and it has more elements than just like, oh, amazing combat. Like it has amazing combat, but it also has this very well done dialogue between Mimir, who's funny as hell, Atreus, who's also funny unintentionally, and Kratos, who's also funny unintentionally. Like I laugh a lot at them, and I don't think it was like in the conversation is not meant to be funny, but the things they say to me are just really funny. So I love it. I love it. I love the banter. Mimir, when you go through a certain there's a part in the game where you're in Tyr's Temple, and there's a bunch of buzzsaws that are just jutting out of a fucking wall. They're literally trying to cut you up like Prince of Persia. And Mimir's like, oh, I hate this part. Can you put me in the front? And he's like, and Kratos is like, I got this.
Can you put me in the front?
Yeah, because he's like, I'd rather be in front of you this time than be behind you. Because if you have a close call, right? If you have a close call, I'm going to die. So he literally says, like, can you move me around? And it's really a funny little thing like that. Because in a way, you could look at it as like, that's a quip. But then when you think about it from Mimir's perspective, who's been dangling on your waist behind you this entire time.
Yeah, he's just bobbing on Kratos' ass the entire time.
Yeah, you're like, this is actually
uncomfortable. Or like the part where like you get gripped up by the vines and then like Kratos is essentially like about to be drowned.
Yes.
And like Atreus has to figure out the puzzle, and you have to direct him to figure out the puzzle, which is a cool puzzle because you had to move around a moon, a sun, and like something in the middle, and basically get the moon and the sun to Skull and I forgot the other wolf's name that chased the moon and the sun. Oh, that's a cool puzzle. But then when you finish that puzzle, right? Kratos gets up and Mimir's like, can't drown. Well, that's something, I guess. I'm like, that's really good. Because you're like, yeah, what was the head doing the entire time?
Do you know how easy it would have been for the writers to overlook that detail that he was underwater for more than you were? Because let's say you're waist deep. That's drowning Mimir.
Yeah, right.
But like for Kratos, I'm just waist deep. That's no big deal. That is such a thing that they could have easily just not addressed at all, and it would have just been a plot hole. Like, how the fuck did Mimir not drown there? But he blatantly says it, like, "Oh, I actually just can't drown. I don't have lungs, right? Like, I don't fucking have lungs."
Right.
It's actually brilliant, and it's funny, and little stuff like that make this game seem way more realistic, and just it feels way more. Like narratively, it's just better. It's just a much better game narratively because it's not just Kratos going through puzzles for the sake of like, why is that puzzle there? Like,
yeah, it's a very rich and immersive experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
Anthony doesn't hate all the puzzles. He just hates some of them, clearly, because he just named a couple that I'm like, that shit is hilarious.
I just don't think that the puzzles are as well, like, as far as a puzzle goes, I just don't think they're as well implemented as something like The Legend of Zelda, or even like you mentioned Soul Reaver earlier. I think Soul Reaver's puzzles are great. Like I love
Soul Reaver's that well.
Most of Soul Reaver's puzzles, but again, that's like from playing it like 15 years ago. Maybe if I play it again, I'm like, ooh, these puzzles are rough. But
an interesting thing is after I finish Ragnarok, my next game is Breath of the Wild, and I will be judging the puzzles in Breath of the Wild against not God of War Ragnarok, but against God of War 2018's puzzles, and just comparing the two games in general, because they were compared a lot in 2018. And I just want to see, because they were both up for like game a year, and like
I think they're completely different.
Completely different kinds of games, though. Like people comparing like Breath of the Wild to Horizon Zero Dawn, I get, but
yeah, but they compare a lot to God of War, because both of those were in the conversation. First of all, they're not in the conversation for best games of the year. They were in conversation for best game of all time. Breath of the Wild and God of War 2018 were in conversations.
First of all, there's no best game of all time. Number two, there are games that like once an era.
Point.
Yeah, because
that's people like love humans.
I know. I just think
what humans do.
I just think it's stupid, because like
I agree.
Like when I say like, okay, like Breath of the Wild is basically a game-changing game for the open world genre,
and for like Zelda franchise,
for an era. Like there are like games that have come after it have like tried to style and amplify, or like enhance what Breath of the Wild has done. So like that means that's what that did. And God of War did the same thing for that genre of game. There are other games that have tried to emulate that game, which means it was a masterclass in doing what it was trying to do.
Yep, and I agree with you. There is really when people ask me like, what is the best game, or what is the best this or the best that, sometimes I have an answer. Like for me, everyone knows anime is Death Note for me, and it might be Attack on Titan in January. But it's really hard to do that the more you watch and ingest media in general. Like the more you take in, like it's easy to say that as a kid. Like my favorite game is Final Fantasy X, because that used to be what I would say as a kid. My favorite game is Final Fantasy X. I was fucking 10 years old when it came out, and like it was fantastic for me. But now I'm way older, and I've played a lot of games, and it's harder for me to say what is the best game. Maybe I can say like, oh, my favorite game is this, but it's hard for me to say like what I objectively think is the best game. I played Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time more than I've played any other game in my life. I played Final Fantasy X a lot. I played 7, 8. I played a lot of different games. Obviously, I can't even name them all because again, I'm older. But like the conversation of what is best of all time is definitely a silly one, but it's one that people are going to have regardless. And I get why they do it, because people just like comparing. Like that is just what people do. It is simply what people do. And I'm just curious because there are similarities. There are things to talk about. Zelda is a game with combat. Zelda is a game with puzzles, and so is God of War. And I want to compare them because they have been compared so much without me having an insight on either. There was a point in time where I hadn't played either. I had given up on God of War, and I was like, well, it ain't that game. And I never played Breath of the Wild. So like for me, I was like completely out of the conversation, and I hated that. Like I have a lot of FOMO in general. It's the reason why I got into watching, like, I watch Stranger Things because of FOMO. I watch fucking what's that one with the people killing themselves for money? Squid Game. I watched that for FOMO because all the memes. It was so many memes online, and I was like, I'm not a part of this. I have no idea why they're memeing Squid Game. So I watched it, and now I get it.
No. Yeah, see, if someone like started comparing God of War and Breath of the Wild, I'd be like, what? I'd be like, have you played either of those games? Like, why are you comparing?
It's never for that reason. It's always just people. At the end of the day, those conversations are always started from an angle. It's always just people being like, they want to start a conversation, and they'll start the conversation off from a neutral, like, oh, what game's better, God of War or Zelda? But really, whoever's starting the conversation is trying to get you to say Zelda's the best or God of War. It's always just people trying to put their favorite thing against your favorite thing and say that their favorite thing's better. God of War is the best game ever. What game do you think's good? Zelda, you're an idiot. And then like it's always just like people trying to
you can't
argue and say my favorite thing is the best favorite thing. That's
you can't change people's mind.
Please don't be that person. Anyone listening, please don't be that person.
I really don't
guarantee you no one
society.
likes that person.
That's one of the things I don't like about society is just the whole, like, you literally cannot change people's mind anymore. And not that that's the goal, but it's unfortunate that when people have any kind of opinion, they feel like if they're offered information from an opposing viewpoint, that is like an attack on them or their character. And that if you don't agree with them, that, like, again, you're assassinating their character or saying that somehow they're lesser than, so they have to defend it even when new information may be presented. Like, there is a chance that I could have lived my whole life saying that the Leviathan X fucking sucks And God of War
Yeah.
2018 in general fucking sucks. And I would have just been wrong, but I could have just been like opposed to new information. I could have just blatantly been like, well, unfortunately, a lot of people are like this. I could be like,
There's
nope,
definitely
Blades of
people that
Chaos.
were in the same position of you, played that game, gave up on it just like you, but never went back to it. And today they're like, that game is fucking terrible. But if they played it a little bit more like you did,
Yeah, or they got the Blades of Chaos and were like, thank God that's over. I don't have to ever use Leviathan X again. That weapon is fucking terrible. And they're just like, because they were so hell bent on hating it from the onset. Like I was hell bent on hating it too.
I'm scared of that person because I'm like, at that point, you've invested so much XP and
that's
other shit into building up your skills with that axe that you're just gonna give it up.
Person who's reluctant about change, but at the beginning, like I was reluctant about using the weapon in the beginning for all the reasons I've already stated. Like I just was like, oh God, this is too much. Like why are we doing this? Why are we changing so much? So like why are we changing so much? And then over time, I was like, oh. I kind of like this, and then
you're like, that cleave is cool. Okay, yeah. That like throwing it and like the circle thing is cool.
You know what it really was for me when I really started to get into the runic attacks. The runic attacks was doing it for me. Like some of the attacks, which there's one where like you take the axe, you just start going fucking crazy, hitting the ground like fast, and like this ice starts to come out and shit. And there's another one where you literally shoot a laser beam out of the axe, and it like freezes things, and you could point it however you want.
Also, the rake is good. The
rake is nice,
which is always
Ragnarok,
nice.
Thank you for that. Yeah, but yes, it's really cool. A lot of the things that, again, if I was just hell bent on hating it because it's different. Like I want the blades, and I will not see it any other way. I'm going to compare the blades to the axe, and my choice is the blades, and I will not accept anyone who likes the axe at all. You're a retard if you like the axe. I hate you if you like the axe. I'm defending the Blades of Chaos every day. If I was just that guy, then like, yeah, it's unfortunate. You missed out on a good thing.
The last comparison I'll make, and this is like in favor of God of War 2018, is Ragnarok it's getting critically acclaimed, and it deserves it, but it also doesn't. My opinion. I'll get more in depth when we do the Ragnarok video, but I do feel like there are things that Ragnarok did to like that amplified the great things in God of War 2018, and they're great. And there are things that they did that are super detrimental, and I hate in Ragnarok, and that took away from it. So that makes the game like a very like kind of love-hate, hot-cold experience for me. All of that to say that I do think that God of War 2018 is kind of like the perfect game in what they were trying to achieve. Like, I think what they were trying to achieve, they did it the first time.
I'm not far enough in Ragnarok to have a real opinion about it, so I'll just wait. But when I finish it, when we do the podcast, it'll be a good discussion because I'm interested. I have yet to ever play a game that is like 100% perfect or whatever, but I really enjoyed God of War 2018. I actually enjoyed the ending a lot too, with the Loki reveal and stuff. And I'm enjoying Ragnarok. Definitely not perfect, not without its problems, but neither was 2018, neither was the first trilogy. But we will see. And then eventually, months and months and months from now, before Tears of the Kingdom comes out, I'll be finally playing Breath of the Wild like some 5 years later. And we'll be doing an episode.
I can't wait for you to play Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about your experience on that too.
Yeah,
especially.
What were you about to say though, Ant? Ant just had a.
Oh, I have one more question before we end. Since not this God of War, this God of War won Game of the Year, but one is nominated. Do you think that, and because let's be real, out of the nominations, who do you think is going to win? God of War Ragnarok.
I saw this. It was Elden Ring. Yeah, it's between those two. Everything else is a meme.
Yeah, it's between those two.
Everything is a meme. So before it was God of War versus Red Dead Redemption. I shouldn't say that. It was God of War versus Red Dead Redemption, Spider-Man, Monster Hunter, and Fortnite. I'm pretty sure God of War won. I didn't really play those other games. I heard Spider-Man was fucking phenomenal though. And I played Monster Hunter. Actually, I played Monster Hunter, so I can say like I played Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is great. Monster Hunter World is great because it revolutionized Monster Hunter in general. I don't think it's Game of the Year worthy though, because it had a really big flaw, but that's a different topic. What I will say about Ragnarok being already nominated for Game of the Year is I don't like that. I don't like that with anything because it just came out a fucking week ago. Like, not even exaggerating. It came out like literally a week ago. I hate when anything comes out and based on just how it has been treated in prior periods, right? It's already critically acclaimed at a high level. In my opinion, literally because of what it's done in the past. Not to say that this is not a good game, but there's no way you can tell me that in a week, honestly, in less than a week, because the nominations came out like a while ago now. Like they've been out for a couple days.
Yeah, I think if a game comes out, because game of the year, that show is in December, right?
It's coming soon.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's in December. Anyway, I think if a game comes out in November,
it should just be in next year's.
It should be in next year's. Like it should be like from November to November at the latest. Even November, honestly, is cutting it a little too close. I think it's too close because 1 month isn't enough time to really like. Also, here's another thing: Game of the Year means that was the game of the year.
Right? Exactly.
So like, if it came out in November, that game didn't shape the year.
Yeah, I don't like the conversation that's already happening online because everyone is just saying Elden Ring or God of War, and everyone is doing that thing. Elden Ring has this in a bag. It's not even close. You guys are tripping. And then a lot of people are like, God of War has it. You're tripping. Did you not see what happened in 2018? And I'm just like, oh my God. And one of my flaws as a human being is just that I read comment sections and I enjoy it. But me too. They are toxic. They are.
Oh, absolutely.
They are there for chaos. Me too. But I understand that it is a guilty pleasure and that it's bad for my mental health. But I still do it. I still indulge.
Every time I see like a video and I'm like, what are people thinking?
That's exactly. I go dumb. Right. Like the video is one thing, but I didn't see
y'all have too much of that energy. I watch a video, I go, I enjoyed that video, and I get out of there.
I go right to the comments. I'm
not engaging with those people. I'm not engaging with those people
at all. I'm above that.
I am curious. Because I'll be like, wow, people really think that, huh? That's crazy.
That's actually what I do too, Anthony. I like to see what the consensus is for humanity. I like to, and obviously it's a small population size or whatever.
For humanity.
But I do like to check the temperature of the room. Like when people are like, for example, a big one that I really hate, conversation comes up all the time. This is completely left field, but like, it'll be like, oh, Beyonce's overrated. That'll be the post will be like, do you think Beyonce's overrated? And I just love to see what the comments have to say about that topic. That. Because
I
know
that the juiciness isn't the video. The juiciness is, what are the comments going to be?
Because it'll be, obviously, the video will be a compilation of all her best moments, right? So it'll be like all of her best songs, all her best videos. And the video's great. Obviously, it's great. It's Beyonce or whatever. She's Beyonce. But then I love to see the people in the comments going back and forth. Like, I can't help it. I need to see the chaos.
Great. It really is. It's that Michael Jackson Thriller meme.
Yeah,
it's like the popcorn. Like,
this has been great.
That said, I do think Elden Ring should win it. Personally, if Ragnarok come out earlier, maybe I think it would have been.
I just think that Ragnarok shouldn't be in a conversation. So I can't.
I think you're cheating Ragnarok out of an honest.
Yes,
because I think if Ragnarok wins, if Ragnarok wins, it didn't win in an honest way because it's so new. You could blame it on hype or whatever. Whereas Elden Ring is now older now.
Yeah,
if Ragnarok doesn't win, you could say it got cheated because it wasn't out long enough. We didn't get enough time with it.
No matter what,
you're cheating Ragnarok.
There's Johns for both because you can literally say, "Oh, Elden Ring came out so long ago, it kind of got forgotten about by now. It's December."
But it didn't though. That's the thing. Is like, and I guess this is why I feel like, and I have opinions about Elden Ring, but truly, and I do not say this about many games, I do think that Elden Ring was like tier wise as good as Breath of the Wild because my experience with it was like I wasn't planning on playing the game at all, and then I got like an hour in, and then I started feeling that like discovery feeling that you feel when you play a game like Breath of the Wild, and like not only that, but that feeling has pervaded throughout the entire year.
I might actually play Elden Ring.
People are still discovering things about Elden Ring, and to me, I think that is like a game that is worthy of Game of the Year because we're still talking about Breath of the Wild, and it's 5 years later. Like I didn't think people were going to be talking about it for that long, but like it's still relevant in the sense that like there are still people making content about Breath of the Wild now, like a week ago, and the video will have like 20,000 views. Like that, to me, that's relevant.
I think that all the games that we're talking about right now are in that same category of like relevancy and just content still coming out for all of them. I want to play Elden Ring because it's been acclaimed as like one of the best games ever. It's in that conversation again. And I think rightfully so, because even the stuff that I see, because I have seen a bit of Elden Ring, I watched you actually play it on stream. I've also watched a lot of, I don't know why, but a lot of the Monster Hunter channels that I follow all switch to Elden Ring, like randomly. Like all of them are just Elden Ring channels now. Every single one of them is an Elden Ring channel. Every Monster Hunter channel is an Elden Ring channel. So I would start to peruse Elden Ring videos without really playing the game myself. And I found a lot of what I saw interesting. The builds, people come out with builds every day, which is still happening now, like Anthony said. Like literally right now, people are still making Elden Ring Berserker build, Elden Ring Blood build, and all these different builds and all these different endings and all these different like ways to run through the game. And I also think that because the game's been out so long, it's worthy of Game of the Year. I think that Ragnarok should just blatantly be disqualified for the fact that it's been out for literally 10 days. Like, that is absurd to me for no other reason. Yeah. Ragnarok is a phenomenal game, I'm sure. I've already played enough of it to where, like, honestly, again, the part where you play as Atreus in the beginning is so fucking cool to me. Like, it is so cool to me that I can already see, like, also the storyline and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I get why God of War is great. Like, I get it. But to nominate it for Game of the Year and it's been 10 days is ludicrous. Like, it's just
it's purely on hype and name recognition. Yes. I'd be saying the same thing if, you know, because people are like, oh, you just love Nintendo and Zelda. If Tears of the Kingdom came out the same release date that God of War Ragnarok did, I'd be saying the same thing.
Yeah, it doesn't
like it shouldn't be considered. It shouldn't be considered this year. Like, it's just.
I just think it should be moved into next year. It just came out, and the fucking award show is like in 2 weeks. The award show is 2 weeks from now, and the game will have been out for 3 weeks. But the people who have already nominated and it's already been decided what's going to win, like, that's done.
Yeah, dude, there's some people that by the time the award show happened wouldn't have had, because like at the end of the day, some people work a 9-to-5 job and might have kids and have to take them to soccer practice. Like, some people aren't going to have a chance to beat God of War by the time the award show happens.
I am one of them. There's a high chance, especially because it's holiday season right now. It came out before Thanksgiving, let's be clear. And then a week after Pokemon came out. This is a big game to compete with. The biggest IP of all time, right? So, like, God of War is up against holiday season and Pokemon. I'm a person, thank God, I don't play Pokemon right now. But, like, I could easily see people not beating God of War in time. So if it wins the award show, it's going to be kind of awkward. It's like, well, I didn't even get to finish it, and here it is winning Game of the Year. I guess I should probably go back to that, but I've been playing Pokemon because Pokemon is Pokemon.
Also, those award shows also have a lot of voting, right? So it's like, you can't even get honest votes out of people.
Yeah, like, people voting for fucking God of War, they're just being disingenuous. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating conversation because I know that, don't get me wrong, because I know that people who are listening to this might be thinking, well, you guys realize that there are early release copies, right? I understand that people have been playing God of War Ragnarok for months. I get it. I understand that there are a lot of reviewers,
most people haven't.
But the majority of people have not played God of War for months.
A vast majority.
99.9% of people just started playing God of War 10 days ago. That is
and also, even that, it doesn't matter. The game officially released at the time it officially like, I just think the rules in general need to change.
Yeah,
like,
I'm just
if a game gets released in November,
it
doesn't qualify. Like, that's crazy.
I just want people to know that we're not dumb. We know that people get early release copies, media copies of the game, and we're not, like, they should not matter. They should just not matter.
Yeah.
I'm putting my vote in, and I'm saying, like, there's shit about Elden Ring that I hate. Specifically, the entire third leg of the game. Hate it. Difficulty spike is out of control. But Elden Ring is a great game and probably deserves Game of the Year.
Could you imagine if an album won Album of the Year for music and no one has heard it but the producers who actually made it? And, like, the media who got it, like Beyonce's album comes out to the media, like, they have it. They have Beyonce's album, they have Drake's album, they have Kendrick's album, but, like, they win, one of them wins, and the public has not actually gotten to, like, sit down for more than 10 days to digest the album. It's just like, album of the year.
You know what it would feel like, and I guess you know what this kind of to an extent feels like whenever, like, they announce the sexiest man of the year. Because anytime that anyone announces it, I always only ever see people like talking about it to disagree with it.
Yes.
Because this is the sexiest man of the year. Everyone's fucking dumb. Like, you know,
they don't even give. Go ahead, Kenny. Go ahead.
I just wanted to throw the stake down on. I'll do slightly backtracking, but I think the cutoff should be the last day of September. I think if a game comes out in October, it shouldn't be able to qualify for Game of the Year, because I think October is like the start of the holiday season.
Yeah.
But the holidays didn't really start yet, so October is the last month that, like, a person with a life could realistically play a game throughout that whole month. Once you go into November, like now you're full swing holiday season, your shit's fucked.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot going on. Like I'm not going to finish Ragnarok. I don't think I'm going to finish Ragnarok until after the awards. I genuinely do, because I have so many. We record a podcast 2 times a week. We have holidays this week coming up. There's just a lot going on. I also work. I work a full-time job, so there's a lot that I have to do.
It also puts like games like Pokemon in a weird spot, because I'm like, well, wait, so Ragnarok was considered, but Violet and Scarlet weren't
that is an
considered?
interesting thing too. Was it a week cutoff? Like, what was God of War? Literally,
Yeah, like what?
Did they purposely release God of War? Did Santa Monica say we want God of War to go against Elden Ring, so we're releasing it on the exact cutoff? Because that could be the case, by the way. Just like how Lord of the Rings decided that they wanted to compete directly with Game of Thrones for some strange reason, and like that shit did not work out. But they did it anyway. I'm wondering if God of War or Santa Monica was like, yeah, we want to compete with Elden Ring. We don't want to compete with Pokemon next year, or whatever the fuck is going to be next year's titles. So they blatantly put it in.
Next year's Game of the Year is going to be Tears of the Kingdom. But
yes. So maybe they were like, we don't want to compete with Zelda.
They were like, we don't want to compete with Zelda.
We don't want to compete with Zelda because you don't know who's going to win. We rather not head to head that shit. So we're going to go easier. Maybe they think that Elden Ring, like you have to pick your battles. You either go against Elden Ring or you go against Zelda.
There was 2017. It was like, oh, well, who's going to win, Nintendo or Nintendo? And you're like, yeah, no one wants to do that. So
yeah, so that is an interesting thing. I wonder if Pokemon got cut off or like what the case is. I'm actually probably just going to Google and find out. But anyways, we could wrap this up. I think that this was a really good conversation. It's also one of our longer episodes. So thank you, Anthony, for giving us your time and stopping by the podcast again.
You're welcome.
By the way, so for those of you that may or may not know, we're probably not going to have a podcast out for like another week because we're going to be away for Thanksgiving, all that holiday stuff. And we're going to be in New York at Ant's house. And we'll probably do a Thanksgiving podcast wrap-up episode when we get back. And anyway, I guess I can just, Ant, if you want to, we're going to be at your house. So if you want to be on the Thanksgiving recap episode.
Sure, yeah. I can tell you all how they destroyed my lovely living space.
I was thinking about those people at your house. But yes, we will be off. So I'm glad Kenny brought this up because I almost forgot. We will not be recording an episode outside. We'll be recording our additional episode for November at some point later in the month. But as far as our schedule for the rest of the month, there will be no episode after this one for a week. So this is the last episode for a week, and we're giving everybody the grace of just celebrating Thanksgiving or the holidays with your family. We're going to be doing the same thing. So please bear with us, but we will be right back to our normal schedule really soon. And then the same thing will happen Christmas and New Year's week. We'll be off for that whole week, obviously, because Christmas and New Year's. But yes, I appreciate everyone who rocks with the podcast and just still listening to us. And we have all these different topics. We've been doing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Lately. So now we're slowly getting back into the gaming realm and like anime and stuff like that. And yeah, as I always say, do the things that make you happy, including celebrating God of War. And it's fucking now like 5 main games in the series that we really talked about here. We will do a whole Ragnarok podcast soon. So
that was awesome. So long, Gabe Bowser.
So long.